All right, good morning. It is 11:02, so we'll go ahead and get this board workshop underway. First item on the agenda is public comment, and we did have somebody sign up to speak. So, Ms. Strock,
Where did I go?
to the podium in the front. I mean, all eyes on you, no pressure.
My favorite. Hey. All right, so thank you for allowing me to speak today. I've worked in GISD for 4 years, and I've loved being a part of this district. I listen to every workshop, and I tune into every board meeting because I really want to know what's going on with the future of the district that I care about. I really just wanted to take a moment to thank Melanie. I don't know where Dr. Brent is, but he was going to be on the letter too, but he can have another time, for their service. So the famous Maya Angelou quote says that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Oh, I'm not going to get emotional. But anyways, Melanie, in the middle of COVID, you and I got to spend a lot of time together, serving meals to a lot of families. 100-degree heat, we had masks on, we had gloves on, we weren't sure why we were wearing gloves, but whatever, we just went with it. You came to my house to congratulate me on winning Teacher of the Year in the middle of COVID. Y'all did not have to do that. So I really appreciate your service. I really care about how you make people feel. You ask really great questions, you assume good intent for district leadership, and you aren't afraid to get to know us. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for contacting us for personal and professional reasons. I know you've had your own issues going on and you still show up. So I did just want to say thank you for that, and I wish you well in your next adventure. But GISD has been lucky to have you as a part of our school board. So thank you.
Okay, and that kind of sets the tone because this is the last workshop. We'll have Melanie here.
Get ready.
But yes, all right, then I guess we will get into the work part of the workshop.
You bet. We've got some work for sure. Running through a few things of note today. We've got a budget update, including some conversation around our compensation plan as we move closer toward adoption of it. We've got a policy update. We have an update around our strategic direction, priority objectives. And then we know we've got quite a bit of time set aside for a planning and timeline discussion with our superintendent search firm. And so we'll get things started with Jennifer and a budget update.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
She found money. That's the news.
That's right. All good news.
Yes. Well, as you know, work has been ongoing for many, many months on the budget. We've had 5 workshops. This will be our 6th workshop. We'll have one more workshop in June, and then we will bring the budget for adoption and approval at the regular board meeting in June. So the work is still continuing, but we are getting closer to a budget, and it is what we know it is as of now. I wanted to just kind of do a very brief highlight on the bills that are being floated right now that will directly affect the budget. There are lots of bills that will affect school districts. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
I got you all clipped out.
Okay. So sorry. Okay. House Bill 100 is a big one. It has a couple of things that will affect our budget if passed. For one, it raises the basic allotment by a whopping $90 for next year, and then an additional $50 for the year after. So that's where that is right now. It changes some of the other allotments, the additional allotments, to enrollment-based instead of average daily attendance, which is helpful. So that would be positive. The other thing it has in it, as it stands now, would be a 4% decrease in our recapture payment if we paid it early. It's like an early credit. So right now, the way the law is, we pay it in August for the prior year. So we would be paying it in February instead. And as you know, we have most of our tax collections by then. So that is a high cash balance for us at that time. But that would give us a credit should we choose to do that and should they allow us to do that. So that would be positive for Georgetown. Then there are a couple of bills regarding property taxes. Both would give property tax relief, but the House is looking at it a different way from the Senate. The House is looking at it more as a property tax decrease, and the Senate is looking at it as more of a homestead exemption so that you wouldn't be paying as much tax on your house. So both would give property tax relief and reduce taxes, but they're coming from different directions at this point. So those are just, there's many bills, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're May 1st, and the legislative session doesn't end until May 29th, so we've obviously got a long time till that, and then there's always talk of a special session, which would mean we go on into the summer. So let's just take a look at where we are as of now. This is based on what we know now. So the first column, there's 3 columns. The first column is our forecast. We looked at this last month. This is where this is for our current year forecast, so that's the first column. The second and the third columns are identical, other than the middle column, the second column, includes the 3% increase that TASB modeled for us, and then the last column is the 2% increase that TASB modeled for us. So if we just kind of start at the top and look at revenues, property taxes is our biggest funding source, and it's highlighted in yellow because anything highlighted in yellow is subject to change based on the bills that we know are coming through. So especially on the revenue side, much of our funding is dependent on how those bills end up going through the House and the Senate. So then we have investment income. We are forecasting an increase in investment income based on higher interest rates and diversifying our investments. We go down the next line is just other local income. We're projecting that to stay flat. That's our athletic events, just fundraisers that the district has with revenue coming in. The next line is our state funding, which is also highlighted in yellow because it will change, probably could be quite a lot depending on where we end up. But that is projected to go down because our property taxes are projected to go up, and so as we know, it's a balance. So those are projected to go down. And then we have the next line, which is our TRS. That's a self-balancing. We have that, but that's both the revenue and expense of the exact same amount, so it's a net neutral on the budget. And then our federal projects are reimbursements that we get for our SHARs, for our Medicaid billing. We're projecting that to stay flat. And then the next is the federal indirect costs, which we previously have not charged, but we will be transferring money, indirect costs from our federal grants to the general fund to help cover some of the general fund. That's something that a lot of districts do. We've just not done it in the past here in Georgetown. So that's for the total for revenues would be $188 million forecasted. And then if we go down to start looking at expenditures, our recapture payment would be going up because our property taxes are going up. So that is projected at $53.8 million. Again, it's highlighted in yellow. Would be nice if we might have a 4% decrease in that, should we have that option. So that's also could and probably will change. This is just based on what we know now. So when we look at our operating expenditures, the only difference between the second and the third column are the 2023-2024 salary and stipend increases. One of the $3.9 million is the cost of a 3%, which includes the adjustments and increases that TASB has recommended. If we go with the 2%, it's $3.1 million projected. The next line is the increase in the health insurance contribution that the district would make to cover the increase that we will be seeing in our health insurance premiums. The next is a $2.1 million increase for incremental staff positions based on the growth of the certain campuses, our staffing charts. The next is $2 million of ESSER-funded salaries, which will need to be absorbed by the general fund. This year we were able to charge them to ESSER. Those funds are running out, so we'll be charging those to the general fund this year. So that's another addition of $2 million. And then as far as our non-payroll expenditures, we are forecasting a $1.9 million increase for inflation and added costs. So that gets us to total expenditures. With the 3% model, it's $196 million, and with the 2% model, it'll be $195 million. So that does leave us with a deficit of $7.5 million. We are, if you go down one line, we ran the model. If we were to get a $90 increase in our basic allotment, we project that would add $2.7 million in funding. So that gets us down to a deficit of $4.8 million adjusted. We won't know that amount, but we feel that's pretty conservative based on the models that we've seen. But again, that could change. So if we were to get that additional $90 and our deficit was $4.8 million, that would leave us as our fund balance as a percent of operating expenditures of 18.39%, which we know is not sustainable. We do know that many districts are adopting deficit budgets, just through our conversations with Region 13, other CFOs and other superintendents. We have been working on ways to reduce that deficit. However, with so many unknowns and uncertainties at this point, we have not cut anything else other than what you're seeing here. So that is where we are right now, as of what we know now, which is, there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Can I ask you for some examples of federal indirect costs?
Yes, so each year through TEA, we establish a direct indirect cost and an indirect cost rate. Currently, it's 3.94% for the unrestricted.
But what exactly, where does that money go?
What it does, for example, if we're talking about like Title I, it would take 3.9% from Title I, as an example, of that grant and put it in general fund. And it's to cover the cost that the general fund bears to administer those grants.
So it doesn't go to a Title I school?
Well, it would not be the Title I school funding. It's
Okay.
the overall allotment.
So it's more of administrative costs?
It is. It helps the general fund. And the one fund that really helps is with child nutrition, Fund 240, because we get to use the unrestricted indirect cost rate, which is a higher rate. So that helps us bring that over. However, we can't just do it for child nutrition. We have to be consistent with all grants. So many districts do this. We just, as a practice, have not in Georgetown.
Where did we put that money then?
It just stayed in the grant,
just
and it rolled
absorbed it.
forward.
It just rolled forward.
Rolled forward.
Jennifer, of course, the $90 just seems so heavy. I mean, I'm just
It's
really
insulting.
disappointed to see that that's holding enough to talk about it today. So if we go into special session, you know, we're scheduled in June to approve the budget. And if we go into special session, what does that look like because we would be going, I would assume that we would be adopting a budget or propose to adopt a budget in the middle of June when we don't really know what the final numbers are. So what does that look like?
So what that looks like is every legislative year, every legislative session, this is what happens to us, right? Every 2 years. So what we will do is amend the budget based on what the legislature ends up with, which is a very common practice, and it is more difficult for July 1 fiscal years, which is what we have. September 1 districts typically have a little bit more information when they're passing their budget, but when we're passing the July 1 budget, and the legislative session's not even over yet, we just have to know that we'll be amending it.
So my takeaway from looking at this, and I know you have crunched the numbers and tried to find everything you possibly can, there's just really no getting around a deficit budget again. It's not a matter of deficit or not, it's a matter of how much deficit. And how, I know we adopted a deficit budget last year. What about in years prior to that?
We have not adopted a deficit budget. I think 3 years ago was the first time that we adopted a deficit budget. But if you think about it, we haven't had any increased revenue since 2019. The basic allotment has stayed the same. And if you think about the years between COVID and just the needs of the students growing and inflation, you know, like I said, most districts are adopting a deficit budget. Each district has their own unique situation, but most districts are looking at adopting deficit budgets.
And you said that this, you know, either 18 or 19% fund balance just isn't sustainable in the long run, but how many more years can we get out of it?
Right. Well, no, I think we'd have to take some action.
At the rate of decline, 30.
3 years and then we're just out of money.
Well, then we're in serious trouble.
Right, and I don't think we could consider that. That's not what we're proposing. I think that the proposal is that we know there's a lot of uncertainty right now. We probably will have a deficit budget, as you said, no matter what the legislature does. It's really just a matter of how much of a deficit it will be. And then I think from there, we will continue our work.
And that's what I would add. The way we're currently structured is we meet every other week about the budget, and so we would just continue that practice and come right back to you guys with updated information about whether we're making recommendations for good news and there's things we can do, whether that's with salaries or just celebrate with us, get excited, or if it's with given the landscape, here's what we're considering, here's what we're talking about, help us align this strategic direction, and here's conversations that we're looking at. But that's our already working rhythm, and that may need to move to weekly, but as the dust settles and we know the landscape, that budget team meeting will really be driving that conversation. And we sort of have been having those in a way that we already, that won't be new work, it'll just be time to start implementing and executing that work.
Yeah, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I want folks to understand this is not any sort of mismanagement or poor spending on us. These are circumstances completely outside of our control to the extent that it's the state dictating and pushing down. But, oh, by the way, we can't kind of control who we vote into state offices.
Thank you for that. Yes, that is very true.
Just something to keep in mind.
Yes, sir.
I was very interested in that 4% credit. Your recapture payment that you have of $53,800,000, is that assuming the credit or not?
No, I did not assume the credit. I know that we did kind of assume the 2.7 million for the House Bill 3, but I did not assume the credit, so that would be an additional 2 million,
Well,
approximately.
I did a quick calculation, and it would be 2 million, nearly 200,000. But if we pay it 6 months early, we lose 6 months of interest on of wherever
Well,
it
I'm
came
sure we're not
from.
earning 4% interest.
So in 6 months between February and August, and if you're making 4.5, you're going to lose 2.2. So if you take off the 2.2, that still gives us $1 million. And so I'm strongly in favor of doing that.
Millions and millions.
That gets the 4.8 down to 3.8. That helps.
Yes, it does. That would help.
Now, there's another thing to think about, and this is pretty big, but it is doable, and that is we can ask the voters for a copper penny. And that way, we can maybe make it palatable to reduce the INS tax rate by a penny, raise the M&O by a penny, and I know the bad news on that is the recapture comes out of that, but that is a way to raise some more money. Now, the voters would have to approve it,
Yes, they would.
but, and maybe, you know, if we're lucky and we get through with a 3.8, you know, then we still wind up with a fund balance of 25 million, and so maybe I'm jumping the gun to even talk about a copper penny, but that is something to think about.
That is, and I think once we get through the legislative session, we could look at that as an option with more seriousness and more clarity, because we also know that with some of the property tax relief that's being proposed, that may hurt us on the INS side if there are higher, for example, if the higher homestead exemption comes to pass, then that would be less on the INS side. So I think once we know, we can look at all those options. But you're right. There are some options that we look at.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like there has been some bills being proposed that we're talking about adding a seventh golden penny into giving the ability.
That is correct.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
I don't know
correct.
if they're going to have, gain legs over the next month, but there has been bills proposed.
We actually do have 8.
We have 8.
We
Okay.
have 8, so
Uh-huh.
that would not particularly help
Gotcha.
our district. It would help other districts,
Yeah.
but we already have 8.
Gotcha.
So we're 8 golden pennies.
Page here 2.7 is with the adjustment for going from ADA to enrollment, or that's,
It's not,
so we're
no,
not even looking at that piece
no,
yet.
no.
So that would be on top of this as well.
Right. This
Which
is a
could be
very
substantial.
very conservative estimate, because there are a couple of other things they're looking at too that could help us. We right now get the fast growth allotment, which is prorated, and they're talking about taking that proration off. So we would get our full amount on that. I think currently we get close to $1 million, so we'll be getting over $1 million, not over $1 million more, but
Right.
it would help us, So there are other things also that are not included in our model that we ran.
And with that $90 adjustment scale with like the CTE adjustments or other adjustments we get for programs?
Those are some of the separate ones that they're talking about,
So we have no.
increasing, but it wouldn't, that one's not being talked about as far as going to enrollment. But, so that one's not a big one right now.
All right.
All right, so let's move on and just talk
Now let's move
about
on to
next
something
steps.
happy. Yeah.
It's gonna make me happier.
So, Sue is going to talk about compensation, and then that will be coming for approval at the May 15th regular board meeting. Like we just talked about, the last day of the legislative session is May 29th, but we know that there could be a special session. Probably will be a special session. And then we will have another budget workshop on June 5th, and we will bring everything that we know that's happened in this month to that workshop. And then on the 19th is when we will approve and adopt the 23-24 budget for next year.
So when thinking about compensation for today, I just wanted to go back to Tasby's presentation and kind of remind you of some of the highlights from that. So in both our 2% and 3% plan, we're talking about raising the minimum hourly rate for our employees up to $15 an hour. We want to increase our teacher pay scale at the 0 year, as well as some of those important years of 10 to 29 for our more experienced teachers to get us in line with our market. We also want to talk about adding a new stipend for SPED teachers. We are still in a hard-to-fill area with special education, so we would like to offer a new stipend for SPED teachers and increase our existing stipends for BCS, ILC, ECSE teachers, because those are still, as I mentioned, hard to fill. We want to talk about increasing our beginning bus driver pay to $21 an hour to try to remain competitive with some of our neighboring districts. And as we've mentioned, without our pay scales, there are adjustments in there to compensate for things like increasing that hourly minimum wage to $15 an hour, or different adjustments that need to happen to make us competitive in our market. We also mentioned in Jennifer's presentation about increasing our monthly benefit contribution from $378 to $422 a month to help increase that increased medical costs. And so as a reminder, our medical plan is going up by about 7.5% for this upcoming year, and so we want to do this increase to kind of offset that increase for employees. And our last increase in the employer contribution happened in the 19-20 school year. So I think we're kind of at that point where that needs to be something for consideration. So the next two slides I just put up from our TASB presentation that talk about our teacher pay scale. So as a reminder, the first model is the 2% model, and it would increase the teacher pay scale to a beginning salary of $53,850. Now, on your chart, the orange line is our existing salaries. The blue line with the little triangles is our current market data and our market comparison. Now, keep in mind that as districts adopt their compensation plan, the blue line is going to move up, right? And then the green line shows the 2% model and where our salaries would land in each of those years that are across the bottom axis. And so then that was the 2% model. On the next page is the 3% model. So you can see that same information, but you can see how with the 3% model, our green line moves upwards a little bit more, and also gives us a little bit more, I think, breathing room when we think about that blue line moving forward with what other districts are adopting. And I think Jennifer and I can both attest that we're hearing from our colleagues in other districts that they really are looking at a minimum of 2% and 3% models. And then if the legislature comes through with, lots more money, then all of that would be revisited at that time. Again, lots of things to consider if that were to happen. So the next couple slides, I just put back up TASB's cost of each of the models, the first being the 2% model. And you can see how where we'll have our general pay increase, but again, those adjustments will be necessary, which would bring that overall cost of the 2% model to $3.1 million, of which about $1.4 million of that goes to our teachers and librarians and the folks that are on the teacher pay scale. It also includes like those additional stipends that I mentioned earlier. And then the next page, if I can flip and keep up, is the cost of the 3% model. Again, with the general pay increase and adjustments comes to a price tag of about $3.9 million, of which slightly more than $2 million of that would go to teachers and librarians and folks on our teacher pay scale. So those are kind of the summary of those two cost models.
Can I ask a question, Sue?
Yes, ma'am.
A special education teacher was talking with me, and this person was really concerned about the teaching assistants or the paraprofessionals.
Yes.
And the frequent turnover. What does it look like for this particular group of employees?
Well, their minimum pay is going to go up as well because we're raising that up to the $15 an hour. And then those pairs that are in our BCS classrooms and ILC classrooms, they are in a higher pay grade than like those minimum pay grades. So all of that will kind of flow through our pay scales as we increase that minimum. It is hard. It's hard to keep people. I know this past year we've worked really closely with special education on some contracted services to try to get additional support in those classrooms where people are leaving or we haven't been able to fill positions to try to help in that situation. But thanks for asking. And so then I think I have my summary page and next steps. Again, just bringing this back to, having a compensation and benefit plan that's competitive, aligns with our strategic goals. Our hiring landscape, it's still competitive out there, and it's still, I don't want to use the word bleak, but it's still hard. We are seeing some increases in the number of applicants for our teaching positions, and we're trying to be very proactive and really get ahead of that. But we also are kind of, keep an eye on things that are hard to fill. And we hope to plan to bring the adoption of the comp plan to you in May. At the May board meeting, so that piece will be behind us, and then Jennifer, and then I'll fold that into her larger budget, which would be brought to you guys in June for consideration.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's a question, more of a statement.
Yes.
2 of our campuses, Wolf and Mitchell, are pretty big.
Yes.
They're elementary.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you all have discussed this, but I would hope that we're looking at adding music teacher,
Yes.
PE, fine arts, and a library aide at both of these campuses.
Yes.
With 868 kids, think about reshelving books alone.
Yes.
And then you've got to get parents in there to help volunteer.
Yes.
So I hope we're
Yes, we do
looking
have
at-
some additional staff built in to
Good.
campuses for next year and in some of those areas, and also are looking at ways we can perhaps even utilize our volunteers and community members to help out in some areas as well, to help
I
out.
just know the librarians are struggling,
Yes,
and I
and
think
those
we
larger
forget
campuses.
about them.
Yeah, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Right. Thank you for that comment. Yes.
Mhm.
So any other questions about the comp plan? Because then we get to roll into some fun stuff with a policy update.
Oh, boy.
So exciting. Trust me, all the district leaders who get my emails about policy updates need it with the same excitement. So just as a reminder, updates to policies are required due to legislative and regulatory changes. Legal policies contain citations to the statutes, rules, and case law and govern a particular topic. We cannot change legal policies. Those are the ones that are set out to be in compliance with law. Local policies provide clarity and additional information that contribute to district operations. So in Update 120, this is from past changes to things. We're in a legislative session, so I imagine as they close out, or if we have special sessions and those close out, TASB and their team and legal services would work on those updates. So I imagine we'll probably see something in the fall or early 24 to reflect changes that are happening currently in the legislative session. The ones in Update 120 are a result of past changes to law. In Update 120, there were 29 legal policies and 4 local policies that TASB recommended the update for. And our next slide, I think, has the 4 local policies and a high level about what those changes are. In CB local, it is state and federal revenue sources. They're asking that the district provide public notice of federal grant applications through an information item at a board meeting. CKC local safety program and risk management emergency plans is asking that we have in our emergency plans, if we have a local train derailment, that we have that encompassed into our emergency plans.
That has become an issue.
It has become, yes, it has become. FNG local student rights and responsibilities. It just had some clarity in language around the scope of Section 504 and individuals with disabilities about how to handle complaints with those groups of students, as well as how to respond to a complaint about a dispute over a student's eligibility for free or reduced meal programs. FO local student discipline had a clarifying statement about the district employee can restrain a student with a disability in accordance with law, and also clarified some language around video and audio monitoring. So those were the 4 local policies that were part of 120. And in addition, we have proposed changes to 2 additional local policies, DAEB local and DC local. DAEB local is compensation plan, wage and hour law, and we are making a proposal to change the maximum number of compensatory time earned by non-exempt employees to be moved from 120 hours to 100 hours. And this benefits the employee in a couple different ways. One is we would love for employees to I'll say kind of flex their time. Or if like 1 week you're required to work a few more hours because of a special project or program, take some time off when district operations allow. But then if that's not possible, we want to, in our practices, when employees get above that threshold, then to be able to pay them for that time that they've earned. So then we can kind of monitor that and keep that within an acceptable range. Our surrounding districts, we are a little bit high with that 120 hour. I would say the majority tend to be around the 60 or 80 hour range, and we may work toward that over the next few years. But this will be just a step in the right direction for that, and will help us be in alignment with some of our surrounding districts.
What's our experience? How many employees are going up to 120?
I would say we currently have about, I would say, 6 to 10 that we're working with and kind of getting them back in compliance with our policy and getting their hours down. And I would say as a general rule, it's not many more than that who would be hovering around that threshold. A great example of an employee who might be earning comp time are like registrars at the start of the school year. For example, some of my HR staff or payroll staff during those like peak times when they're working. But that's the type of employee, and it's not a great number of employees, but I feel like it gets our policy back in line with our neighboring districts and more manageable. Now, DC local employment practices, we are requesting to update the language to delegate the final authority for hiring contractual personnel to the superintendent. And this change just really kind of helps us be in alignment with our current practice. Because as you know, we're in a competitive market. If we have a great teacher and we want to hire them, we want to make sure we can issue them a contract and get them on board and get them in a classroom with kids as quickly and efficiently as possible, as opposed to waiting for the board to approve a contract at the following board meeting. So this change is kind of happening to help us be more in alignment with our current practice. I did want to call out that, you know, I think Dr. Brent and I think Lindsay now will always keep you informed if we're hiring, I'll call it a principal level position, executive director, any type of positions that we're going through that process, that she would keep you informed. And if you would love, I can always provide you I call it the purple folder. But you know, I come into the board meeting with the purple folders, and for those of you watching or in the audience that don't know about the purple folders, it basically is a list of all the contractual personnel that we've hired from the last board meeting to the current board meeting. And it usually has who the person is, what school and position that they'll be in. So we can continue to update the board monthly on that.
I want to say something about the purple folder and what it does for me as a board member, and I think it does for other people as a board member, which people you may not, you know, what I've learned from it is the wide breadth of positions that are in a school district. And some that are new to me, I don't know what they are, and it gives an opportunity to talk about what does this position do that we wouldn't have the opportunity if we didn't do that. I think it's also great because we're able to see the wide range of people and where they come from, that they're not all from Central Texas, that they may be from Iowa, they may be from the Northeast, they may be, and that we are attracting people from a wide range of areas. So I think it just gives me as a board member, and I'm sure it does to others, just some education about our staff and a holistic kind of, and I wholeheartedly, and I don't know if it needs to be in this policy, that we are because it doesn't say that.
Right.
I don't know if it needs to be a part of this policy, but if it does, I'd like it to be stated, because that's important. And I understand the reason we want to make the change, because it was always, you know, having a principal having to say, well, the board, you know, I'm hiring you, but the board's got to approve it, so it's not as clear.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does that need to be specified in that policy?
I was going to say, it can be our local practice so we can continue to do what we do, because I don't think we've even had that spelled out like in our policy. Yeah. So TASB's recommendation was the language I provided you guys in the weekly. And my proposal would be that we continue with that and we just have our local practice to continue with the purple folders. And may over time, that may even evolve to something different that is more informative or something different that you may want.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's very helpful to have everybody listed for
Yes.
us to look at. That's great. Thank you.
Kind of nice to see if somebody's gone and then they came back, you know?
Yeah.
I think if we're looking at a check register all the time, we ought to see who's being hired.
Yes, we can do that.
Many
We can do
pages
that.
of the check register.
So do you have any questions about the policy update or local policies?
Let me flip through here and see if I wrote any more.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think so. I think the only comment I have has to do with the comment to provide public notice of federal grant applications.
Yes.
Right. I think that's actually great because it makes it more transparent how much money we're getting and where it's going. And it needs to actually be a talked about item at the board meeting. So I think it's a great change.
Terrific. Well, yay.
Yay.
That's the end of all things policy. Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Well, we have one more update for you, and that's around strategic direction, and just want to update you on the conversation work that's happened since we last talked about it at workshop, which I think was in March. We have the one pager here of the priority objectives that we talked about. So just to reorient you, in March, you guys adopted the direction, and we told you then that we hoped that in April, we would be able to finalize the priority objectives for the coming school year, the 23-24 year. And that's the work we've been doing at the district level since then. And to orient you to why adopt annual priority objectives internally, the whole intention, of course, is to make tremendous amounts of progress every year toward becoming all of the things in our strategic direction. But we know it's all really good stuff. It's also really big and will require a lot of resources. And so annually, we intend to narrow the focus a little bit by identifying which specific objectives within that strategic direction we intend to focus on in the coming year. And so every year we'll go about identifying which coming year will have which priority objectives that will determine which resources, whether it's just organizational energy, let alone money and resources and capacity. Those same priority objectives will be what you'll see reflected in district improvement plans and in campus improvement plans. They'll actually be, the language is the performance objectives on our plans. We also are going to ask our campuses to identify one of those priority objectives to be what they do the CBAS processes around, the community-based accountability engine around. Our district departments will identify just one as well. So the engine is the language around that you saw Danielle come in and present to us about. They won't do that on all 12 objectives, but they'll pick one to do that with. And so that's another way that we'll be able to report progress around our annual priorities. So how we landed at this list that you guys, we shared last week and that you've got in front of you today. We did a lot of this work with our principals and our directors and our executive directors. They had quite a bit of input into this list. But we also very much considered all of the input that we collected through the strategic direction process. And so thought back to those focus groups and the survey and what we heard from people, including you in that process, but also in workshops, what we were hearing from you as priorities, as what our first objectives would be. We also thought about our capacity. We also, that last bullet, when I say root cause or order of operations, we know that by focusing on some things first, it will influence progress in other areas. And so that sometimes influenced our decision and how we landed on what. And so we are ready to continue moving forward. You guys technically adopt these in August when you adopt our campus plans, but because we want to spend the next several months doing needs assessments and identifying strategies and setting forth our evidences that will have how we'll know we're making progress, we wanted to share these with you now and give you the opportunity to hopefully be as excited about them as we are, but also if you think something's missing or want to talk more about it, at some point we can in this development process so that we don't get all the way till August and you guys feel like we missed something. So that really is the intention in this conversation, was to update you, but also give you the chance to, whether it's now or if you want to reach out at some point in the coming weeks to have more conversation, you can.
Can I ask a question?
You bet.
Okay, so this would be your large goal. So will every campus on their campus improvement plan have this to be the large goal? And then there will be, is there going to be a district measurable objective that's going to be underneath? I'm trying to
Picture the improvement plan.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
picture the district improvement plan, because what I understood when we approved these was that the district improvement plan would be done first, which makes total sense. And that these would be the strategic areas, underneath them would be your district improvement plan goals that would be measurable and specific. And then the campuses underneath that would come up with a goal that would be in that range. So because at this time last year, I mean, the board was making goals, based upon input from the administration. So help me to understand what this process is going to look like.
Sure.
Yeah. So we actually started that conversation last week at DLT with our district leadership team and all the principals, and kind of talked about the way that it'll kind of flesh out what the evidences or the measurables or whatever we want to call those. And so as we're walking, the campuses and departments are identifying which of these priorities are going to be kind of big change or major change, and which ones are minor change, and so forth. And then departments and campuses will walk together to identify the right evidences, so percent of whatever meeting a whatever, right? And we expect that there will be some similarities between, consistencies between district and campus. There will likely also be some things that are specific to a campus that may not be reflected in the overall district aggregate. And so we expect to spend the next couple of months working, May and June, really fleshing those specifics out, running kind of department or district improvement plan processes and campus improvement processes kind of parallel with each other.
I might have understood the question a little differently.
Oh,
That's
maybe so.
possible
So
with
you'll
a
let us
Lindsay
know
Harris
which
brain.
answer
Yeah, we'll give you
helps.
a West brain and a Lindsay brain.
Yeah.
One is much simpler. The 4 strategic priority areas will represent goals in the plan, and then these priority objectives will represent performance objectives. And then the evidences, which there will be multiple for each performance objectives, will have numbers that look like where we're trying to go, and would represent star numbers and attendance data and walkthrough data and survey data and anecdotal data and student portfolio data and interview data and all of that. And so that's where the numbers will be baked into for each performance objective. We'll have lots of numbers, and that's what we'll be monitoring progress toward the evidences, both qualitative and quantitative, for every single one of these performance objectives, both at the campus and district. But some, for example, on the
Give us an example. That would be helpful.
okay, so the first example sorry, Melanie, that I was about to say, the Georgetown ISD provides competitive compensation and benefits to employees will only appear in the district improvement plan. It won't appear in,
That makes sense.
right? But so a district evidence for that could include straight comparison data piece, right? That's an evidence, but also might have some survey data, might have some interview data, all kinds of things. So multiple evidence is there to show, and we'll set those in August when we see plans, those are set. And so quarterly, we're monitoring progress. Some of those evidences we'll be able to speak to from the beginning, and some won't, depending on the kind of evidence, right? But up in student learning growth and progress, GISD students are prepared for post-secondary education or alignment or any of those. We'll be able to set a lot of evidences at the district level, some of which you guys are very accustomed to looking at. I can imagine even more evidences that maybe we haven't spent as much time looking on before. We'll be able to fill in as evidence of progress, things that we're looking at quarterly to see how we're making progress on that performance objective.
So there'll be a district improvement plan,
Yes, ma'am.
which will be done first, correct? Or simultaneously?
Simultaneously.
Okay, and then the campus is gonna be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Thanks.
You bet.
And now this is set, even though it's marked draft.
Yes.
Y'all are working off of this.
We
We
are-
don't anticipate any
Correct.
change in this. Okay.
Correct. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, we'll keep you posted. We'll be back with updates along the way.
Thank you very
bet.
much.
You bet. And then before we move into the next part of the workshop, let's take a brief break. I see they're here. They're ready. We were scheduled to start them at noon, so let's do that. Let's take a 10-minute break.
And there's lunch and drinks.
Oh, yeah.
For you guys. We're working on our template for that, though as soon as that's something we could attach. Something
Another word,
concrete.
evidence is that you used, I wrote that down.
That's a West word.
I love
That's
evidence.
what Terry been retraining my brain.
It's like, well, he won't behave, well, what does that mean? Right.
Yeah. We've talked to with the team that seeing it concrete and then
Yeah, because
will be helpful.
Yeah, it'll be, yeah, when you get the template done.
You bet.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna come up and make this conversation.
Good times.
It'd be okay if we can get that average enrollment instead of average daily attendance. We'll probably get us down Yeah, yeah.
Giving 2% instead of 6.
Well, that's pretty good.
How much did you, or stand up and say were
Well, I mean, it's my fifth more time.
That was pretty cool, actually. Yeah.
She didn't put up pictures of you in an inflatable outfit.
We were just talking about Jen Green, like, that was a crazy time. It's so much fun.
Did.
We just hung out every day. Me and Sid. We know each other. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Living on Pearl.
So there's this one woman who come through the car line. And
Sorry about that. Thanks.
It was like a catapult.
Seriously.
And I knew people were recording already.
Awesome. Yeah. It's one of my finer moments right there. So glad it's on film.
For everyone to see. Okay. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We've got the video camera and the voice catcher thing. Sure has a fancy microphone on it, if you will. Okay, so we are moving into the part of the workshop where we are going to really kind of dig down into the details of the calendar and also the process of finding our next superintendent. So I'm really excited to get this process underway.
Yes.
I'm going to hand it over to our fantastic search firm who will kind of lead it from this point forward.
Thank you. Since we've met all of you, but there's a bigger crowd here today, we thought we'd introduce ourselves again so everybody will kind of know our background, why we're qualified to do this. Because it's, we believe, the most important decision that you will ever make as a school board member. So we want everybody to trust, we're very transparent, everybody to trust us, trust you that this is going to be a successful process. So, my name is Rick Berry. I am, retired superintendent. I probably should say a recovering superintendent. I've been retired now for 19 years, and I was superintendent for 16 in 2 different districts. I was superintendent in Arlington, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. First, after I spent, actually we spent 21 years there, and I started out as a high school counselor, assistant principal, junior high and high school, and then ultimately superintendent after moving to the central office. Then I never thought I'd leave Arlington, but I got recruited to go to another district in Houston, the Cypress Fairbanks School District, which you might be aware is the 3rd largest district in the state. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and we moved to Cy-Fair and lived in the Houston area for 28 years until a couple of years ago we moved to New Braunfels, where our son and daughter-in-law live. I've been consulting, as I said, I've been consulting for 19 years, working for some different companies that work with school districts, and one of those is Hazard, Young and Attia, which is the largest search firm to do superintendent searches in the United States. Headquarters is in Chicago. Hazard, Young and Attia has somewhere between 125 and 150 people like us all over the country doing superintendent searches. At any one time, our firm will be doing 20 to 25 searches. So that's what's happening right now. We're the Texas team. One of our members is not here today. Her name is Dr. Nola Wellman. She was superintendent in Eames, a school district outside of Austin. And before that, she spent most of her career in Cherry Creek School District in Colorado. But she is a Texan. She was born in Odessa, went to Permian High School, and then went to Texas Tech, and I can't remember where else she went, but anyway, Nola is a key member of our team, been working with us for a long time. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, I'm Jody Duran. I am also a retired superintendent. I retired in June of 2022, so I'm going on 1 year anniversary. So I'm the young one of the team, Rick.
Yes.
I spent 31 years in public education. My career, and my husband is also an educator, but our careers took us all over the state of Texas. From the Waco area, where I started my career as a teacher, and assistant principal to the Houston area, Clear Creek ISD, where I served as an assistant principal and then later human resources. I was in human resources for 3 years. Our career took us to the El Paso area, West Texas for a few years, and then back to Central Texas. And since we've been back in Central Texas, Comal ISD, which is just down the road, 6 years leading their curriculum and instruction department. And then most recently, 10 years as the superintendent of Elgin ISD, just down the road from you all. I mentioned to you all the hardest part about being the superintendent was having to play you all in football. So I own that, I say that with love, and I'm happy to be here. Since I've retired, we think that retirement looks a lot different, but it turns out you go right back to work right away. I am, in addition to doing this work with Hazard Yanhatia and Associates, I have the privilege of being able to serve as the Associate Director for the Texas Association of Mid-Sized Schools. We represent about 25% of the districts in Texas that range in size from 1,500 to 5,000 students. And I'm also working with Moat Casey. You all might be familiar with Moat Casey, and if you interact with them, there's a lot of the work that we do with school districts, but the division that I particularly serve is strategic planning and board governance, board training and governance. So it is a privilege to be with you all, and we are just really grateful for the opportunity to participate in this search with you.
And there was just one thing for clarification. You mentioned that the firm overall has several searches going on, but you team
That's
are
right.
devoted to just us. This is
We
the
are
only
only
search underway.
doing your search. That's the way we like to do it. I know some search firms will do 2 or 3 at a time. We don't like to do that. And so you're the only district that we're working with. We just finished a search in Judson just a couple weeks ago when they named their lone finalist. And we've been doing searches on a regular basis now for about 12, 13 years in Texas for the firm. They had other people when we were working doing these, but those folks have all retired again. I just remember that I didn't tell you. I was a teacher. I did start out. I did start out as a teacher and a coach and a bus driver in Roscoe School District, very small school district west of Abilene. That's where my wife and I both started our careers. You know where Roscoe is?
Sweetwater. My husband's from Sweetwater, so we know Roscoe.
Really? From Sweetwater. I'll be there. He probably even knows what the mascot is.
For Roscoe?
It's
I
very
feel like I
unusual.
should know this.
Plowboy?
Plowboy.
That's it. I thought it was a person, yeah.
We used to play it.
I tell people I started out as a junior high coach, and the mascot for Roscoe Junior High was the Clodhoppers. So I started out as a clodhopper, so I had nowhere to go but up. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to start out with a laugh. I hope you've had a chance. We sent you the agenda, and so you've had a chance to think
That was
about maybe
helpful.
a little bit of what we're going to cover today. We're going to go into quite a bit of detail on each part of the process. Make sure if you have any questions that we get those answered. We're really glad to have people here at the meeting because, as I said, we want to be very transparent. We want the community and the staff to trust this process like we want you to trust this process. We know that it works. Have any of you been through a superintendent search as a board member before?
No.
One person? Okay.
Help choose Fred.
Yeah, okay, you hired Fred. This is maybe a little different, but it's probably, they're all fairly similar in process. We do some things that we think that others don't do. We think we work harder, we do more, smarter probably. But anyway, we think you'll enjoy the process. Our whole goal is to help you find the very best superintendent for you right now and moving forward. And another sub-goal is to make the process easy for you as board members. And that means that we will do all the work and you make the decisions, okay? We're a partner, you're the senior partner, we're the junior partner, junior partners do the work, and that's what we're going to plan to do. Okay. So I'll let you know that Nola Wellman is, as we said, the other member of our team, and Nola is not here. She's actually on a pre-trip they already had planned, and she's right now floating on the Rhine River.
Poor thing.
We have been in contact with her, and she's doing very fine. But we want you to know there's only 2 of us here today. There'll always be at least 2 of us with you when we meet. Most of the time, probably 90% of the time, all 3 of us are going to be anytime we have a meeting with the board. Okay. So the search process, we're just going to give you an overview and answer questions. We'll go into as much detail as you would like to go into. You may modify. We've told you this in the interview. You'll customize this search for you. So this is the Georgetown search, and it may be a little bit different than some of the others. That depends on you and how you want to do this. We, as we also said in the interview, we make recommendations on almost every part of the search. We do that because we know how to do it. We've done it before, and we know what works, and we know where the pitfalls are for superintendent searches. And we will do everything we can to help you avoid any pitfalls in the process. Okay, and the other thing is that the 3 of us, we're going to be your search consultants throughout the entire process. We're not going to leave you in the middle of the process. I mean, unless one of us dies or gets disabled, we're going to be with you all the way through. Just wanted to assure you we'll be with you. Okay. The outcome of today's planning meeting will be to customize.
I mean, don't draw attention to yourself, Brandon.
As I said, it'll be to customize the search for you. We're going to talk about the calendar. One of the big things today is to set the calendar, and that's why it was so important for all of you to be here. I hope you have your personal calendars with you. We're going to talk about the key events that will happen in the process, talk about the times when we need to have board meetings, so you can definitely get those on your calendar. We want you to understand every step in the process and what your responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are as we move through this. We do want you to have a clear understanding of the online survey, which is a really important part of building the profile for the superintendent. And we want you to be aware of how the profile will be used, especially by you when it comes time to start going through the candidates and interviewing and comparing those candidates to the profile that will be developed by you and your staff and your community. All of that input goes into the process of developing the profile. And we're going to be setting some key components about communication, how we will communicate through the entire search process. Okay, Jody.
All right. So you all did receive the planning meeting agenda. It had a lot of questions in there that we will resolve and answer today. So we're going to be taking notes. We call those our takeaways. So we'll make sure even at the end of the meeting that we have captured everything accurately with you. So you'll see us jotting down notes as we go through each of the meetings or each of the questions. But as we begin this process, I think it's important to just highlight there are 4 phases of the process that we follow. The first one being the engage process. And this planning meeting kicks it off. It starts us on the plan, on our path to our engagement phase. As Rick mentioned, there is a survey. We have a link. It's already ready to be posted. Once we have direction on who our contact will be, we'll get that posted. We'll get it pushed out. And we will periodically send reminder emails about making sure that community staff have access and can complete that survey. During the next couple of weeks, our goal is to begin our focus group meetings and having those community meetings. We'll talk more about what those groups look like, how many groups you want to have, how to structure those. And the real purpose of that, those focus groups and meetings is to help identify what you're looking for in your next leader. What are those attributes? And that will help us build a leadership profile. And then the board will approve that profile, which will be the basis for our next phase, which is actually the recruiting phase. This is where we begin advertising. And by the way, it's already posted online, the job.
I was wondering.
It is, and we already have, I looked yesterday, we have 3 applicants already, and we haven't even had this meeting. So that's exciting to see, but I guarantee you, this will be a very intriguing job for a lot of applicants. So I expect we'll see in the upwards of 40 some odd, I would guess, 40, 50 applicants. So it's an exciting time. But during that recruit phase, not only do we advertise and applicants rise organically through the system, we as your search team are pretty active as well in recruiting folks. Superintendents that we have networks with or connections with. Our networks reach pretty far, I will tell you, with the districts that we've worked in, as well as committees that or organizations that we've been a part of. I know we've all been a part of TASA and other groups that give us access and knowledge about superintendents who are leading. Not only just Texas-based, but we also are looking outside of Texas. And again, depending on what you all are looking for in your next leader. So once we have applications, we begin to screen. Your team will screen those. We'll do some pre-screening of those applicants, and we prepare application materials for you, as well as we prepare you to take the next step in actually selecting your superintendent. We'll help you with the interview process, questions, and so forth. So in the select phase, we will meet again with you all a couple of times. One, to approve the leadership profile, but then also to talk about the interview and the applicants that have really risen to the top. From our perspective, you certainly can ask questions about any other applicants that may not have made the top list. We're happy to share that with you. But there typically is a first round and a second round. In the first round, we would expect you to interview anywhere from 6 to 8. 8 is a lot, but 6 is generally what we see boards interviewing in the first round. A second round, you would usually limit that to, you pick your top 3 from that 6. It is up to you all. We've seen this done differently with boards, but a lot of times in the second round, we invite the spouses of the applicants to join them. And that gives them an opportunity, you an opportunity to meet the spouse, them an opportunity to engage with you all, and that can be very useful in helping to determine who. You want to make sure whoever's coming with them wants to be here. I think that's always a question that they're willing to make that move and be fully committed. And then, of course, during the selection phase, we do a deep background check, particularly on your loan finalists, but we will do our due diligence in checking your top 3 for sure, and we'll talk more about the options that you have for that. And then the last piece of the select phase is a site visit. When you pick your loan finalist, it is generally our recommendation that you do a site visit and to meet with folks in the district that person is coming from, and to ask questions about their leadership in the district that they've come from. And then, of course, negotiating that contract. The final phase is the transition phase. Once you appoint your superintendent, you name the loan finalist. You know, we have the 21 waiting day period. You come back, you make them official, you approve them as your superintendent. From that point, we don't just say goodbye to you and good luck. We want to continue to engage with you to whatever degree and level you want us to. Particularly, part of this process, included in the transition, is being able to sit down with you all as a board and your new superintendent to talk about the process that led up to their selection, the leadership profile, the community groups, what surfaced as important to this community. And so we're willing to do that at your discretion. And then, of course, there's other optional services if those are of interest to you and they happen to be in one of the packets that we sent you. We won't discuss those today. That's not today's purpose. Going back to our engage phase, the first thing we will do in the next couple of weeks is engage the community in discussion. When we talk about the community, we're talking about the large community, school community, your staff, you all as the board, and actually, I need to clarify, we actually start with you all, the board, and then we will continue to move out towards your staff, your larger community, and Rick will talk through that with you all. But the one thing we do is, in those meetings, we ask the same questions of all the groups. And you can see what those questions are. The meetings typically take around 45 to 50 minutes, but we want to focus on what are the strengths. What do people perceive as the strengths? What are we doing well? What makes us proud about Georgetown ISD? What are some of the challenges facing the district? Leadership competencies. When we think about our next leader, what are we looking for in terms of leadership competencies, personal attributes, expertise, administrative style? And then what does this community, this is a special community. We love coming to Georgetown, by the way. But what is it that this community believes is a real draw for applicants to come here? And this is an interesting question. Is there somebody that you all, that anybody knows or has thought of and said, I wonder if I worked in another district and I wonder if they might apply? We want to hear who that might be. Are those people that we can and should reach out to? Are they qualified based on the leadership profile, based on the qualifications that you all are asking? And so that's a question that we ask all of the groups. We do that more discreetly. That's not that's not open for discussion, but we do it in a discreet way so that we can honor confidentiality of names of folks. Rick?
Okay, a couple of things I want to emphasize that Jody was talking about. One is on the recruiting phase, and we may have said this when we interviewed with you, but we like to recruit quality candidates. We like to go after the candidates that we know are experienced superintendents with a good track record, happy where they are, not in trouble, don't have any big issues going on that have them kind of worried about their job or anything. And we do recruit actively. And in fact, we've looked back over the jobs that we've done here in Texas, and somewhere between 70 and 80% of the candidates who actually got the job, people we recruited. That's one of the reasons for having a confidential search. The first question that any candidate who has a good job asks when we call is this a confidential search? I like where I'm at. I've got a 3 to 5 year contract. My board is happy, the staff is happy, the community's happy, and I'm happy. And my family is happy. So if you're going to talk to me about this, got to be confidential. I don't even want to talk about it. That's the first question. Second question is, tell me about the school board. That's an interesting question. We hardly know you. We know about you from talking to Fred and talking to others, but so we're trying to learn about you as well, so we can have that conversation with board members, because you're about to, in a few months, enter into a marriage. Basically, it's really big deal for these candidates and their families, and that's the really important part of it. Another thing I wanted to emphasize is on the number. Why do we recommend 5 or 6 people for you to interview? Why do we do that? Well, the one reason is you're not used to doing this, especially for the CEO of an organization this big. It's real easy. It's even easy for us to get them mixed up if you get too many. If you start talking specifically about 8 or 10, they start to run together in your mind after you've interviewed. It's going to be an intense process. Once you get to the interview part, it's pretty intense. You're going to be interviewing one right after the other. And so if we get too many in there, it's going to it's confusing for everybody. And we found that it generally, even if we've had like at Judson, we had 52 candidates. We got down to 6, there were only 2 or 3 more that we thought could fit the profile and do the job to the extent that they wanted. That's going to happen with you too. It always happens. That's why we do that. Those are the main reasons why we do that. There have been examples, and I'll tell you about one. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but we had one example where the board said, no, we want to, actually there were 2. We want to interview a 7th candidate. We will tell you about candidates 7, 8, 9 probably, and share all information about them as well, but they won't be recommended in the 6th. We'll tell you why. One of the board that won where they actually selected the 7th candidate as their lone finalist. That's the only time that's ever happened. And there was an extenuating circumstance to that. Is that number 7 would have been in the 6, but she was coming from a very successful school district where she had been successful, but there had been some board elections that flipped the board, and they had a whole different agenda than the previous board had, and it stirred that community up, and it was a mess. Not her fault. She was doing a great job, and she actually never got blamed for any of the mess. But there were people, conspiracy people, all kinds of stuff going on, and we told the board the reason she's not in the 6 is because if she comes here, those people that are upset about it, they're going to blame her, and you're going to hear about it, and your whole community is going to get upset. Everybody's going to be upset. They picked her anyway. She's a great superintendent. She's doing a great job now, but hell broke loose in that community, as we predicted it would. And so they had a tough time in that 21-day waiting period defending her and defending their decision. And we said, we're not going to say we told you so, but we did tell you so. We knew that was going to happen, and sure enough it happened. It actually happened one other time. If we need to get into that, we'll get into that, and we'll give you some advice, but hopefully I don't think that's going to happen here. It's very unusual, although there are a lot of districts where hell's breaking loose, as you probably know. Anyway, so that's just some extra things for you to remember. Okay, in terms of community engagement and focus groups, one thing we want to always do is have individual interviews with the board members. We can do that. It's a little more difficult for us to do that in person because that means an extra trip for one of us or both of us or 3 of us. So we can do that by phone. Most of the ones we do are by phone, but we can do a Zoom with you individually if you'd like, or if you really want to, we can come. It will just cost you some more expense money for our time and travel. And we'll work through that when the time comes. But that's a really important part, is to get your perspective and everything that you know and want us to know about the district, about what you expect, etc. We want to have an interview with Fred, private interview with Fred, to talk about the district and what he thinks is important, in terms of the next superintendent. We want to talk to Lindsay and have an individual interview with her as well. We want to have, we're going to talk about groups, okay, focus groups. One we'd like to have, we recommend these, and we're going to go through here and let you select the ones you think we should do. But we generally recommend the senior leadership team, as a team, not individually, but as a team. And the other central office administrators. I'm not really sure how many you have. It's not on the order that I had, but it's probably more like you had. So once we get a handle on how many you have, we don't see any problem. We can't think of any reason why they can't be a team, a separate team. principals and assistant principals. We'd like to have a group of principals and assistant principals as a focus group. And then,
And breaking those up by elementary and
yeah,
secondary.
yeah, we can break those up. I guess it depends on how many you have, but it would not be a problem for us to have an elementary and secondary group, which we normally do. And then other staff, certified staff, support staff from the schools, and we generally have like those right after school, and we'll have them in a central location. They can come from all over the district. Elizabeth and I talked about that. This is pretty much a central location. When we do this in bigger districts, we have to travel around, so there's a lot of time for us getting to and from places. If it's a central location and that works for y'all, that would make it easier in terms of accomplishing in a shorter period of time. So that would be our recommendation. Support staff, any auxiliary staff. We don't want to leave anybody out. Anybody that works in this school district ought to have an opportunity to tell us what they think. They have a different perspective, and it's all very important. We know as superintendents, it's always nice for the superintendent to go out to the bus barn and visit with the bus drivers when they're coming and going. Same thing with the cafeteria workers and everybody else. So that's an important aspect. If you want to, and we've done this and we think it's a good thing, is to have a group of high school students. We don't think it's a good idea to have middle school and elementary students. They don't think in those terms. You know, I don't think their minds are quite ready for what a superintendent is. I know at visiting schools, when you go to the elementary school sometimes and they introduce you, say, well, you know, this is superintendent of school. Raise your hand and say if you have any questions. Well, are you the president of the United States? Something like that. And sometimes they'll go home and tell her, I met the president.
I do have a question about that though,
Okay.
with bringing in the high school students, having had a couple of my own.
Yeah.
What about recent high school graduates? Is there any way, and maybe not as a focus group, maybe we'll discuss it later when we talk about survey groups, but I mean, my kids didn't know what they didn't know when they were in high school, but after they left.
Yeah.
It was
That's a good idea. That's really never come up that I remember, but when we get to this
all their
point.
email addresses? We just,
That's Landon, that question.
Yeah, that might be difficult to put a group together, although, I mean, you all may know enough that we could have a group just among yourselves.
even the survey link.
Because we
Yeah,
have quite a
we
few
can-
high
Get that
school
out to
students
them.
amongst this group.
Definitely push the survey out.
Put it on Snapchat, they'll find it.
The survey link will be on your website, so anyone will have access to it. And then 2 of the meetings I think you're about to get to are public meetings for
Yeah.
anybody. So if you have any recent graduates that still live in town, it would be great to have them at one of those meetings. But if you think there's enough to have its own meeting, we are absolutely open to that.
Yeah, it's a good idea. That's never come up. That's amazing. Never come up. So yeah, and as Jody just said, we have public meetings where it's open to anybody. And we'd like to have a couple of those at least, and maybe one in the evening, one in daytime. People that it's easier to come in the morning, and some that it's easier to come in either afternoon or evening, whatever y'all think, for your community. And one of the things that we like to do is tell people if you can't make a meeting that's scheduled, come to any meeting. Come to the meetings at night that are open to anybody, or we've got a schedule for all the other meetings. Just go. And you can tell us who you are. You don't have to. You just sit there in the group and you can participate or at least listen and learn what's going on. So we just want to be as transparent and open as we can. We don't want to make this process hard for people to participate in. We want to make it easy. So that's the way we'll operate that. Does any further questions?
Sounds good.
Okay?
Can we
You have
just
anything else?
clarify? Yeah, just two things. Well, first, do the groups look, is there anyone on this list or any group that's on this list that you would say, can we either break that up more or maybe? You all are okay?
Yeah, I think we do really need to kind of think, how would we reach out to recent grads? Because, they graduate and they scatter. But
Right.
there's
Yeah.
got to be a way to share the word.
I have all those
All the
former junior
folks,
leadership
yeah.
parents too, that
Oh,
I
yeah.
can send and they can send it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely open to that, so let's
We can
talk
add
about that
as a
more.
group. Do you think that there's enough locally here that would physically come?
No.
If we do it this summer,
We could.
Yeah, that's the problem is with this
they'll
still
all be
being a
home
school year.
freeloading pretty soon.
College.
Yeah,
They'll be at home
We're-
by early May. I mean,
That's what I
you
mean.
keep
Actually,
already out.
yeah, the college students will be home.
College
you
students
teach
will
those,
probably be
right?
home.
But
that's
maybe
right.
what we do is we
Right.
just encourage them to attend one of the public meetings.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's a great
that's
idea.
easy. If you
Yeah.
put out something in the community,
Right.
we'd like to invite our graduates back to one of the public meetings.
But yeah, but just everybody really kind of reach out to those kids that left just within the last, 2, 3, 4 years and say, please come to this meeting. Tell us what your experience has been now that you're out.
We do find that the kids that are in school tend to come if it's during the school day.
Right.
After school.
Yeah, you have it at the school.
Well, and that's a good question. Do you all have a student advisory council or a superintendent's advisory council, student
Of students.
advisory council, or a student council at the high school? If there's already a designated group that meets already, that's generally an ideal group to target.
Well, because, how do we choose which high school students participate?
Yeah, we need to talk about that. And there's one way is to let the principals choose. They'll do a good job. Obviously, they know their kids and they know the ones that will talk and share their opinions and the ones that are probably not going to talk. So let's talk more about that when we get to that detail. But that's one recommendation. A lot of times that's what happens. Many of the districts, they'll have a group that already meets with the superintendent occasionally or something like that. But if that's not the case, we can work something out
And
with you.
because you have more than one high school, what we've seen done is have those students transported to a location, generally during the lunch hour, and have an hour meeting with them, pizza or whatever.
Yeah, feed them while
We
they're
could
there.
feed them, so that would be a way to do that,
And
but we
for
can
sure,
definitely
yes,
talk more about
yeah.
that. The only other thing, there's always a question about your role during these community meetings, particularly when it involves the staff and when they're in those focus groups. Should board members attend or should they not? And we generally tend to discourage that just so that staff members can feel very comfortable talking about that. We recently did a search where board members were attending and it stifled the conversation a little bit. We just typically don't recommend, at this point, wouldn't recommend that.
If you want authentic feedback, it's better for you not to do that. The places where board members have insisted that they wanted to do that, what happens is, board member goes, everybody knows who they are and that they're there, and when they want to make a comment instead of talking to us, so we're taking notes and trying to do the process, they turn and start talking to the board. Because they know you're going to make this final decision and they want to talk to you about it. Well, they can talk to you about it every time you have an open forum, But that's what happens, and it's not good because it messes up the process. So if y'all are fine with that, we suggest you don't go. And we'll explain that, why you're not there. Once we explain that, everybody kind of understands. Okay, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, the next part is again, it's part of the community engagement focus. Most of the time, and we recommend this, there are some people in the community that you want to make sure they get an invitation to show up, that they know they have an opportunity, and because of their leadership in the community, it's important for you to hear from them because they're influencers in the community. So here's the groups that we typically have a group for. And another thing is, some of these are small enough and they're similar enough that we combine them. And when we said each one of these have their own group, we'll have 2 or 3 people that are into one group. One would be elected officials, like your state representative, your state senator, mayor, city council, county commissioners, whatever. So if we'll go through this and you can say, we want these, should we do that now or do you have that information?
I think we can probably get that through Lindsay, or
Okay.
like
Yeah.
once we know, like we'll have a process to who should we reach out to. We'll just funnel
Okay.
the names and then figure out how that outreach is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it's, well, definitely a special invitation. Is it a meeting just for this group, or is it inviting them to one of the already scheduled community
Open forums,
meetings?
yeah.
So it can be one or.
That's what we need you to give us some direction on. Do you want, maybe we should do that now.
Yeah.
Do you want us to have a special invitation at least, if not a group, for all elected officials?
Definitely a special invitation, but my inclination is that they also have their own separate group, because I worry that they may commandeer the
Yeah.
at-large
Yes.
meetings.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll have a group.
Just knowing some of the.
that's good.
We'll have a group and combine
Some of our county
elected
people.
officials. Is that okay?
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
combine all elected
Some of
officials?
our
Yeah.
county people.
Because they've got a lot in common. I mean, they're,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll know each other.
they know each other
Yeah.
and they'll have good input.
You
If-
might have 2 different meetings though,
Yeah.
like a morning and an
Uh-huh.
evening.
Yeah, we could have different times, so let's do that. We'll have 2 different times and invite all of them. A lot of them won't show up.
You'd be
But-
You're in
surprised with
Georgetown.
Georgetown. You're in
I'll be
Georgetown.
surprised. Yeah, I'll be surprised.
Everyone will
I think
show
they'll
up.
be here.
We've heard that before. But hopefully they do. I mean, that's good. The more that show up, the better. Okay, Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
How many people, I mean, do we just need to invite the executive team from the Chamber of Commerce?
There's
or
1,200
members?
members.
They will all
Yes.
come.
No, but a lot of them overlap into all those other groups.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I think if you just focus on the board, the chamber board.
Chamber board?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Got that?
Yeah, Lindsay recommended Cornerstone.
What is it?
Well, let's do the chamber board.
You just have one
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce, right? You don't have.
Correct,
Correct.
just the one.
Because we have a lot.
Because even those cornerstone winners are in those other groups.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of overlap.
A lot of them will.
A lot of overlap.
A lot of them will be in other groups. Okay, farmer board members. You have a lot of
Yes.
farmer board members
I
around.
think that's a
They're
good.
still
You got
here.
one
They're
in
still
your
very
home.
active.
Well, that's very farmer.
Yes. Yeah, there's
But
quite
we
a
can,
few in
if you
the
give us,
area.
Lindsay can give us a list, we'll invite all farmer board members, we'll see how many respond, we can combine them or put them in a separate group. What about, I mean, I know you have a university here, higher ed,
Yep.
administrators, professors, what do you think?
I don't see the advantage
I don't
of
either. I
don't see any
ACC or
advantage.
Southwestern or,
No,
No, no advantage to have
No,
one?
no.
They're very siloed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting, okay.
yes, faith-based.
Faith-based
Yes, we have a
leadership.
ministerial alliance.
That's a great one, that's a great one. Will that pretty much catch
No, it
all
won't
of them,
catch.
or most of them?
Won't catch all of them,
No, it
but
won't. I think we would probably need to add some people.
Yeah, we
because
need to
some
make sure
people-
we let Lindsay
Yeah,
know.
because
Okay.
there's some, but there's some that are.
Go
not
through the
like
church
established,
directory.
they're not part of
Yeah.
that.
Okay, just tell Lindsay who it is, we'll add them to the ministerial alliance group. You have an educational foundation?
yes,
Yes.
Okay, is it very active?
Yes.
Pretty
Yeah,
active.
I think
You have
it
a
should be
board?
involved.
Yes.
Yeah, board.
So you want to have one for the board of the
invite
foundation?
them all,
And
yeah.
then we can invite everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a PTA or PTO
Yes,
council?
yeah,
PTA?
absolutely.
And you have
Yes.
a council for the whole
Yes,
district?
the council
Okay.
would be good.
That would be a good one. That's a
Yep.
really good mark. Okay. Any other groups that those are the normal groups that we think of. Any others that you have that are unique?
It's pretty comprehensive.
It is, it's
Covered
pretty
a lot of
comprehensive.
Sun City. And some,
I thought about that, they can go to town.
That's what I think too.
They
And
come
we're
to
so
the
involved in all
community
this other
life.
stuff that I think we'll still get the overlap.
Yeah.
But they're a huge piece of our tax base, so.
Do we want to separately invite like the After School Alliance folks?
Yes.
Well, maybe with PTA.
Yeah, the
like-
Georgetown
like-
Project
Yeah,
Collaborative.
that.
Mhm. So we get
What's
it.
that?
It's the Georgetown, GCP? is that
It's
what
the Georgetown Project Collaborative.
Yeah.
That's what
And
it is,
it's-
GPC.
Right, and
Yeah,
it's
Leslie
all
Yonka.
bunch of
nonprofits that work with kids.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's
And-
good, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
If
a community.
If we get it
Partners
to,
group.
Leslie Young.
Leslie-
I think specifically that one, that Leslie Yonka, they already
Leslie will get it
regularly
out
meet.
to all of them.
Yeah, we'll meet this week.
Yeah.
I meet with
Yeah,
them
first Wednesday.
Lindsay can give us that information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Who,
Hold on, sorry.
I'm
You
sorry.
keep referring to Lindsay, and so it's enough as a superintendent to run a district these last
Well,
months.
I feel like she's just taking these notes and then they're gonna hand it off to the
Just gonna
team.
delegate.
But we
somebody.
just have to
Make it
have a
happen.
district point of contact to start. Like
Okay.
Lindsay
Yeah.
herself, we're not asking Lindsay to do
Yeah,
this.
so that's, yeah.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
concern.
well, that's what we
That's
think.
actually our-
She-
it's
gonna
actually
come-
Terry's.
Okay.
And she's gonna be our point of contact. that
Yeah,
she
we're
will
just, we're not
delegate.
gonna tell Rick to, oh, go direct that question to Melinda and
Yeah.
that question to Terry. No,
No,
you
this
bet.
is good.
Okay,
help.
Michelle will be a great help, and Melinda
Yeah.
and the team. And then some of these, even with strategic direction work, we already have some names and addresses from these groups that we'll just plug into new themes for you guys, and then you guys will give new names and
Yeah.
all that.
So maybe if you could give us who you already have, and we'll figure out if there's
You bet.
anybody else. That'd be
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, and we're gonna meet all the people she delegates to, so we'll, if we see something coming from them, we'll know that's who
You bet.
it's supposed to come
You
from.
bet.
Yeah. And just for clarity, I want to make sure we get this right. So for the list of this entire list of special invite groups, we are saying let's send a special invitation, but that is a separate group that will encompass all of them, like they're all invited to the same
Yes.
meetings as a special group. Is that
Mhm.
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so, to be clear, our main staff contact person is Lindsay,
Okay.
yes?
Yes,
Mhm.
correct.
To schedule and publicize the above meetings, it says to help schedule and publicize. So we'll send it to her, but she's gonna push it out to staff, so she's our person. And then to provide us with critical documents that are public information, for example, superintendent's contract or any other documents that we just go through Lindsay and say we need. And,
Yeah.
okay. Perfect.
We need, Lindsay, we're gonna need some stuff from, well, and you, again, this stuff you get from somebody else probably, but, for example, anything that's public information, we'll probably come up with a list, but I'll give you one example. We need the superintendent's contract. So we have a point of reference for what we're looking at. But there's other things like that that we'll wanna, get, because those questions come up when we're talking to people for candidates. So we'll just let Lindsay know she can get it wherever she needs to find. Okay, can you think of anything else there? Okay, then let's talk a little bit about the online survey. This online survey has been in use by Hazard Guarantee. They're constantly updating it and improving it. But it's based on research about proven characteristics of that superintendents need. And it's prioritizing these that will be critical to Georgetown. We will send out alerts to people that haven't completed it. If you don't complete it, we're going to remind you, complete that survey. And we want you, Lindsay, through the whatever process to all the staff, get that out, get that word out. Please do an online survey. To parents through the PTA, through whatever other parent organizations. Get every parent organization you can, get that out and tell them to complete the survey. And it's okay if they do it more than once. For example, if they're a teacher and a parent, they can do it twice. One in from that perspective, one from the other perspective. We can figure out if somebody's trying to stack the deck. able to see if it comes from the same computer
signed in
or
40
not 100 times. We'll know that and we'll take that into consideration. But if somebody submits it twice, then we're going to assume that they're a parent and a teacher, or they're something and something else. And that's fine with us. In fact, it's good for that to come. Then we're going to be able, this is really going to be helpful to you all, we'll be able to disaggregate that information by board members, by administrators, by community members, by parents of children in school, by support staff, by teachers, and by students. If you want us to, we will disaggregate by students. We only can do so many. But what we can do is we can do students, and then we'll do yours by hand, because that's the smallest group we'll have.
So that's just current board trustees, not current.
Yeah, just current trustees. We really want to focus in on current trustees, but we want to disaggregate yours, because we want you to be able to see how you compare to teachers and administrators and community people. You'll be able to, it's a really good process, and I'm not sure anybody else has anything like this, that really gives you the opportunity to say, are we kind of in the same league with everybody else about what we think is important? Usually you will be, because you've been out there in the community and you hear from people all the time. But it's really good to know, at least confirm that, or see if there are any differences, what they are.
I have a question.
Sure.
Several superintendents ago, we did do, and I was an employee back then, a survey outside the district. So it was a third-party survey. And that was the only way we can convince everyone to really tell it like it is. There is no way to track your IP address. Right. So confidentiality is...
We're not going to know who they are. We'll just know if it came from the same computer.
Okay. Because that might be something we need to really push out.
Emphasize
third party.
Yeah,
no one
absolutely. Yeah, we need to put that into publicity. And y'all are going to be doing the publicity, so if you'll do that. Okay, and also we need to know, we have the ability to do this in Spanish, and I forget, we have another.
And you sent us all the 7.
So we have the languages in there. Okay, what languages do you want us to do?
English and Spanish for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think? Do we already share?
No, what's our third is Farsi?
Our third language.
I think Urdu right now. Urdu, Vietnamese, and then maybe Farsi.
Urdu, Vietnamese.
We have a pretty big growing Indian population, don't we?
That's why Urdu is our third.
Okay, we'll do all of those that we can. Okay.
What was the third?
What was, did you say Urdu, Vietnamese?
So English, Spanish, I think Vietnamese is second, Urdu, and then maybe Farsi.
Farsi? Okay.
And
We
we
can verify that with our
may not
management
have the
information.
capability to do all of them, but we'll check. The ones that we do have, we will.
We'll do the ones, all the ones we can, and out of that. Okay.
We'll verify.
That's great.
Thank you. And this survey is a forced choice. Some people would get a little frustrated and say, well, there's more things I want to put on here. It doesn't work that way. This is research-based. You get the priorities by forcing the choice. Of all these things that are proven characteristics, you have to pick, 3 or something like that. And so, yeah, there will be others but what are the main ones that you believe, and then when it goes into that, then you start to see priorities, start to see trends in priorities, which are really helpful.
So, and I'm guessing that there's probably not a comment section.
No.
Oh, there is, there, okay. That's what I thought.
It's
That's
just a
what
survey.
just described. Yeah.
Yeah, just a survey.
Yeah.
And it is a forced choice, so
Yeah.
it frustrates me to do that. So, okay, I think that's all on the online survey. Jody, you're going to do
All
the
right,
report.
yes. So one of the tools that is unique to our firm, our organization, is our board portal. All of you will have access to that board portal. It is a way for us to upload information for you to review. It's also a way for us to communicate with one another. But is there anyone else besides the board that you feel needs to have access? And again, keeping the confidential nature of this search, is there anyone else that you think should have access to the portal?
Fewer people, the better. More people, the more likely you are to have.
Right, right. Okay, and we'll give you some instruction on how to use it. It will involve using an email address, usually your district email address, but once we upload information into the portal, we'll provide instructions for you related to that. So in addition to the board portal, communication through this process is really important between you all and us as your consultants, and knowing how you want us to communicate with you. Just so you know, we have your phone numbers, and I hope you all have our cell numbers. If you don't, we want to make sure you have each of our cell numbers, and you can contact us at any time, text, call, email. We are at your disposal through this process, but we want to know how you wish us to communicate with you. There's email. We'll be communicating throughout this process. Particularly, we'll outline those things on the calendar, but workshops, we have several workshops along the way. Supporting materials, when we facilitate the interviews, we'll be providing, again, another workshop to talk through that process and how that works. But is there a specific way or that you would like for us to communicate with you all as a group or individually?
Routinely, what we do for just routine communication as a board is email.
Okay.
And then we'll get a text if it's like something urgent we need to know.
Yeah.
I don't imagine there's going to be that much urgent.
We don't
need to know.
usually have urgent calls,
Yeah.
but you will get frequent, it depends on what part of the search we're in. When we're doing things that you have made decisions on, so NOLA will be the one generally sending the emails to the whole board to keep you updated. Okay, here's what we're doing, here's what's next for you, etc. There'll be a period of time when we are primarily recruiting, and we'll be interviewing ourselves and checking references and etc. And so during that period of time, we're kind of silent, and just know we're working. And you'll see the result of that when we bring you candidates. But whenever the other things are going on besides that, we're already recruiting. We've been recruiting since you told us we had the job. And we never will stop recruiting until you are interviewing candidates. People ask us, if they ask you, this job's open till you fill it, as far as we're concerned. An example of that happened in Fort Worth. We did Fort Worth recently, and the candidate who got the job, none of us had even met 2 days before we decided who the slate was going to be. We had not, we knew of her, but we hadn't met her. I happened to be at a conference, and someone told me that she was there and she wanted to talk to me. And so we met. I said, what do you want to talk about? And she said, Fort Worth. And I said, well, we better talk right now. And we did, and I was blown away. So I called the team and I said, guys, we got to interview her tomorrow because we're going to make a decision the next day. We're going to make a decision on Monday. We get to interview her on Sunday, all of us. We did. She made the slate. She got the job.
Wow.
So we don't ever close out something until we've made a decision and y'all are ready to start interviewing. So anyway, and that's just an example. It happened recently. There are other times where it wasn't that close, but it's happened where they're pretty close. When we hear about somebody, a lot of times that's people out of state that somebody else has recommended to us, but this was somebody in state that we had heard of, and because of the remoteness of where she was, we hadn't met her. And not that we didn't want to, but we just hadn't. Okay, so.
All right.
I'm sorry, is we
You're
ready
good.
to move on? Okay.
I already clicked it.
Okay, now we're going to talk about preferred candidates. And we're going to go down a little list here, and we'll tell you more about it when we get to the end. We want to check and make sure we have all of the parameters that you're going to set for us to conduct what we do after this meeting, okay? And mostly it's related to candidates and recruiting and verifying, et cetera. So we've already said, you've already said, because we've asked, it's a confidential search, right?
Right.
We're all in
Absolutely.
agreement on that. So I'm going to, you don't have to vote on anything today, but I do want to see you shaking your head. This is a consensus of 7 people. Because if we don't have 7 in consensus, then we want to talk about it. We want whoever doesn't agree, talk to us about it so we can see if we can work it out, okay? So we have that one.
Why would anybody do an open search?
Why would?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why. And the reason why, it's typically in the big cities, the big
Okay.
districts. And what happens, there's so much politics that get involved in the big cities. It happens regarding parties, it happens regarding race, it happens regarding what's the hot topic in the city at the time. And there's pressure groups in those communities that contact the board members and say, I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, or I'm the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, I want to be in on those interviews. I want to know who the candidates are. And and in the newspaper, the Austin American Statesman, Fort Worth Star Telegram, their editorial will come out. This needs to be an open process so that people know. Well, never mind that there won't be any good candidates that you'll get. I mean, and what we did to Fort Worth Search, and we convinced them under their pressure that they needed a confidential search. We would not have had the same slate. There's no way we would have had the same slate. I tell you who you'll get if you do it.
I'm not considering it.
You don't have to be convinced.
Why is that even like an option?
Yeah, well, you don't typically have that in the mid-sized and smaller districts. It's usually not an issue. Okay. People understand. I mean, you can have a face-to-face conversation with the mayor and say, look, here's the deal. But anyway, and it's typically the newspaper drives it in a big city. They stir it up. They like that kind of stuff, and they stir it up. Okay. So another thing that's really important, and we have a strong recommendation on this too, is about qualifications for the candidate. Some districts will set, you got to have a doctorate, you've got to have superintendent experience, you got to have this, you got to have that. They'll make a whole long list, or they'll do half of it, or whatever. We recommend you just say they have to be certified superintendent of schools and have a master's degree. I mean, and you have to have a master's to be certified superintendent, so you don't even have to say that. And the reason for that is we know that there are candidates out there that are some of the best superintendents in the state, I could name names for you if you want me to, that don't have a doctorate. Okay? They just don't, and they're really good, and they're experienced. They got a track record. We can think of some right now that we would recruit, that you would be happy with. Not that most of them will have a doctorate. Okay? So it's most likely 90, 80%, somewhere in that range, would have it, but they don't all have it. And some of the ones that don't are really good. So we just say, just leave it at the bare minimum that you have to, and that we kind of talk about it as a funnel. Let's keep the funnel wide in the beginning and bring it down when it gets closer to interview time. And you can make decisions at that time. Most likely you're not even going to have anybody, but there are some, if we can get them, I'll guarantee you, we'll try to get them, and they won't have a doctorate. So are you okay with a big funnel where it's open process? We'll just put in the qualifications to have a superintendent certificate, and then sometimes from out of state, if they don't have a Texas certificate, they have to be certified. They'll have one out of state. They come in, you have to take a test, and they may not have it by the time you name them on finalist. It'll take 6 months or something for them to get what they need.
We got a question.
Okay.
Rick, on the next piece, experience as a superintendent.
Yeah.
Since we are looking at a huge, fast growth district, I'm trying to envision what it would be like for someone who had not been a superintendent
Yeah.
to come in here when you're looking at a fast growth district. But you have a lot of experience here, so if you could speak to that.
My thinking on that is, first of all, I came from two fast growth school districts. I was superintendent in two of the fastest growing districts in the state. And when I got the superintendent's job in Arlington, I hadn't been a superintendent, but I was a deputy superintendent. I was handling all that stuff. I was handling all of the details of it. And so there are a few like that. I would not want to exclude a deputy superintendent in a fast-growing school district just because of that.
I would echo that. I think when you have even an associate superintendent or a deputy that's a part of a cabinet that's fast growth, same thing. In Comal, fast growth, we were building multiple schools in a year. When you're on that cabinet, you're very much a part of the conversations and process. So I think
Would be okay.
I do. I think
For
it's the right
those
person.
types, it would be.
Okay.
Jody's exactly right. I can tell you, having done that, being the deputy and being the superintendent, there wasn't a single board meeting, there wasn't a single cabinet meeting that we didn't talk about fast growth issues, one way or the other. It was involved, everything we did was impacted by that. So that's a good question. That's a really good question. Superintendent experience, we really are going to focus on somebody with superintendent experience for a district like yours, but there are instances, we just finished one where we had a deputy superintendent that actually came in second in a larger district, that was a deputy superintendent from an even larger district who kind of wowed the board and us too. It's a really qualified person but hadn't been superintendent. And so, anyway, that one came pretty close, and that happened. So we just don't like to eliminate people based on an arbitrary group. That there might be an exception. Don't eliminate exceptions to the rule, okay? Let's see. Okay, so the first round of interviews, again, we recommend generally 6. I would say 90% of our jobs we've done have been 6 candidates. That's what we typically think works well for you. And as we've done this process, we think it's kind of what we end up with as we go through. If we have, let's say we have 40 applicants, probably 80% of those, we can look at their applications and eliminate them. We just know what it takes, and they just, you just don't have the background and skill, it hasn't been developed, whatever, but we can, and we have a little rule, we do have an arbitrary rule among ourselves, and that is we have to be unanimous. If we're eliminating somebody or putting somebody in, all 3 of us have to agree. And if we don't, we just keep arguing until we do.
Until somebody gets up.
Sometimes we kind of have long arguments, but we understand each other. We're really friends. We get along very well.
Do you have a preference on the number? Is 6?
Yeah. Are you okay with 6?
That's y'all's recommendation.
That sounds good.
But you will tell us like the number 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll share that with you.
And why they didn't
And why
make
they
the top
didn't
6.
make it.
And we just came off of a search where our 7 and 8, the board chose to interview those over 2 that we had recommended. And this is your search. We want to bring the best applicants to you, and then you all interview those that you want. So
that's unusual.
it is unusual.
It's very unusual, but it happens, and it's your search. It's your kids, your money. You get to make the decisions. We're just making recommendations. We tell you why, but we work for you. We don't ever forget that we work for you, and you can do whatever you want to do, whatever a majority of you want to And we don't recommend you do things on something this important without being unanimous, if possible. Well, we'll talk a lot about that later. When you get down to making a decision, we'll talk a lot about that.
There's also the issue of internal candidates.
Yes.
And if there happens to be any internal candidates, the question is, how do you want to handle that? In some cases, boards want to interview them simply because they are internal, or do you want us to treat any internal candidates like any other applicant?
I say treat them the same as any other applicant. Don't even let us know.
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
recommend.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
recommend, if you have an internal candidate, you may or may not know whether you do or not. We go into a lot of them, and the last one, yeah, we're gonna have an internal candidate, we know it. And that's fine, but here's, our recommendation is, let us handle them like everybody else. If you're hiring us to do this search, we should be the ones that are saying whether they meet not the qualification, whether they meet the competition of the others we brought forward. And if we think they don't, we'll tell you why. If we think they do, we'll tell you why. Hey, you've got a good internal candidate here. You want to stop the search and hire them, or or do you want to keep going and let's look at everybody? So anyway, it works out either way. But we think it's important that there aren't any just courtesy interviews just because you're who you are, where you are. The interviews need to be earned through the process, and then they'll all be coming in with the same the same check that we do. Okay, the next thing is related to salary and fringe benefits. So what we recommend is don't even think about that right now. We're going to, when the time comes, we're going to bring you comparative information for districts like yours in terms of size, and we'll even ask you, what are the districts, regardless of size, what are the districts that you want to be like? What are the districts that you compare yourself with when you look at student achievement programs, et cetera? That's who you need to be compared with, as well as people, districts your size and districts in the area. And then we'll get you comparable salary and benefit information, the latest that we can get, and show you where you're at in that. Usually you're going to find, this isn't always true, that you're behind. That just typically you're behind the market. You may not be. I haven't seen Fred's contract yet, so I don't know. I can tell you probably by looking at it if you are, because we've done so much of this. But don't worry about that. What your job right now, and the most important thing, is to find the best superintendent. Then let's talk about salary benefits. And then, you'll sharpen your thinking about, well, wait a minute here, what should we really do? And we'll give you the best information we can to make that decision. And again, obviously that's your decision, that you've got to be able to justify that, not only to yourselves, but to the community and the state. And so we understand that. So we'll say, when somebody asks us, we're going to say, well, they're going to compare all of the ones that they should compare with, and that's open right now. They haven't set a ceiling, or if you want to set a ceiling, you can tell us. We actually have superintendents in Texas that are making over $500,000 a year right now. They're not many. There's, maybe 2 or 3. And
That wasn't us, by the way.
That
wasn't us. Just want to be very clear about
one
that.
of them is one of my former districts, but they weren't paying me that. Not 20 years ago. But anyway, we have lots of time to talk about that. There is a time when that's going to be the focus of your decisions. But we think, find the superintendent, then deal with that issue. Because if you start thinking about that basically helps you, eliminate people. Not find people, but eliminate people. And right now, we think our focus should be not on eliminating, but finding people. Okay. The next one is on the postings in terms of advertising packages. Okay, there's 3 advertising packages. You can see there from a low of $2,150 to a high of $6,650. Based on what's included for that price, we think the middle ground is the best. You get the most for your money. You get really all you need out of the $3,400 package. You don't get that much more. And we've got widespread advertising anyway. We've got our website, we have your website, we have Texas ISD, TASA. TASA, we put one out? I don't know if they put one out. But anyway, that's a lot right there. And that's the ones that superintendents look at all the time. And that they'll go to. So we recommend a $3,400 package.
And I think that also,
for advertising.
if you are looking at more of a national reach, that makes the most sense. If you're really thinking more Texas-driven, package 1 is going to accomplish that, because Texas ISD, TASA, that's going to be a draw within Texas. But I think it depends on how far you want to reach out. It's totally up to you all.
Did we understand you want to do a national search?
We're not going to limit it. We're not going to limit it and say, no, it's not a national search.
Okay. That's not your focus, but you want that option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because.
But obviously Texas is unique.
Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes, I mean, we post it on our website, so we're getting applications from out of state. I guarantee you, I don't know if it's one of those 3, but they'll be coming in a week or so.
Well, and package 1 does have an outreach for national through AASA. It's a 30-day, but it won't. That's only for those that are members of AASA. Whereas your package 2, you have the Ed Week posting. So again, it is totally up to you how far you want to reach out.
Anybody have any strong feelings on?
I think you're talking about 1,500.
I know.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with y'all's recommendation.
3,400.
Yeah.
Just meet in the middle.
Okay. Well, we just don't know who's out there that might be interested from out of
And
state.
they may have been from Texas and went away for a while.
That's a great comment, because that happens all the time. People leave the state, they want to come back. Sometimes sooner than later. You never know. But yeah, we've had a lot of them. So that's a good point. Okay, so we're good on that. Let's see.
Okay, so on this page, so one of the things that we recommend is that you dedicate a page on your website solely to the superintendent search. It's a click of a button and it has everything on it. The survey will be there, the calendar, the meetings, the schedule of meetings, the leadership profile. So any person visiting your website will know to go to that page. Information from that page will be linked to our application. The link to our application, if somebody's on our site, they'll have a link to your website and it will go to that page. So we strongly recommend that. The question is, again, Lindsay will be our contact and then she'll funnel the work to the right people. Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
And
the main
Melinda
question.
Brasher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She'll handle all that.
All right. Very good.
That is?
Yep.
Okay, the next one is related to communication with the media. There's different ways to do this, and I don't know how much media, presence you have. I assume you have a local paper.
We have one right here.
Good to know.
She has a press necklace.
You should have a press. We can either do that if there are a request, or you can do that. You can have the board president do that. And it may be that you want to just say the board president would do that, but if you want to refer something to us, we're happy to handle it. We've dealt with the
Yeah,
press.
I think I'll keep the lead on that. I mean, she's got my cell phone number, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, just let us know if you need us for anything.
And now KXAN and KVU starting to get out the door for interviews.
Have they?
Maybe then, and some of it off.
Okay, the next thing is the background checks. We recommend a deep background check.
Please.
Yeah, and some districts will go just for the loan finalists. We really recommend that you do the deep background check on all three of the three finalists.
That could help us choose the loan
That's
finalists.
That could help
That's
you,
right.
it could, and also, you're on an aggressive timeline, okay? And to meet that aggressive timeline, then we're more likely, if we start at that point, to have it when you need it. If we wait till loan finalists, it's gonna delay us by a week or two. And I don't think you want that. It's gonna cost you a little more money, but it does help you if there's a problem. Now, we don't usually have any, I'd say 99% of the time, we don't. I may have told you in the interview that we ask the candidates, when we're seriously considering a candidate to be in the slate, we say, we tell them, and we ask all candidates this question, but is there anything in your background that would come out in a background check? If there is, we want to know it right now. Because if it comes up later in a background check or in any other search we do on Google or anything, you're done. You're not going to be with us anymore. Your part of the process is over because you didn't tell us the truth. And we need to know. As minor as it may be, tell us. If it's major, tell us. It's just too important, and it's not going to work if we don't have all the information. So most of them will tell us, and most of them are as plain as a whistle. Now, one thing that I will warn you about that could come up, and you probably know this, especially in the larger districts, media or social media. All kinds of things can get in the newspaper or in social media that aren't true. And so sometimes they will say, well, you might want to look at this article in the so-and-so paper, and let me explain it. And we say, well, yeah, we're going to ask you to explain it. We'll look at it, and then we want to hear what you have to say about it. And if they've got a really good explanation, if it's either not true or it's circumstances and they handled it, then we'll tell you about it so you know when we introduce a candidate. And like we tell them, the board doesn't like surprises either. So don't surprise us, don't surprise the board. Everything's out on the table. Get all your cards on the table. And so we don't anticipate a problem, but this, by the time you name a loan finalist, we want you to have this in hand. And it's very thorough. It goes into criminal, civil, financial, everything.
And the big difference between the basic and comprehensive is exactly what Rick said, is the news media review and social media review. It takes a much deeper dive into that area. So that generally, I think, is
Yeah, that's why we recommend
the
comprehensive.
effort.
Y'all agree? Everybody agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. We do not want to be caught
All
somewhere.
right.
Okay.
Somebody will find it.
I think Jody's going to kick off the
We're
calendar.
gonna, yes, does everybody have a copy of the calendar?
Anybody need to take a break or anything?
I'd like to finish up because I know some of us want to get back to work.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll just power through.
Power through.
Yep.
Okay, so we have updated, since the last time we talked, we provided you all a calendar, but we heard from you all that you would really like to have someone in place by the time school starts. This still is tight, and I don't know that it is getting you at the date that you want, and there is probably very little wiggle room, but we will wiggle if you need us to. So if we can just walk through this and make sure that that you're good with the dates. Obviously, our planning meeting is happening today, and actually the announcement has already happened. Advertising, we'll get that process going. Applications, within 2 days following the letter, we've already seen applications coming through. So some of these it's already in progress. As far as the survey goes, now that Lindsay is officially our contact person, we'll get that survey link to you. And if you all can begin to create a page and messaging to your staff about and in fact, I may have a letter that can help, that provides that information regarding that. So I'll get that to you today. What we're looking at now is focus groups, when we hold those focus group meetings. We are looking at the week of the 17th, or on the 17th and 18th. NOLA will definitely be back. It'll be NOLA and myself in the district for 2 days, doing and it's full days, so we will be here all day for 2 days working on these meetings. This gives your staff time to start sending those invites, to start scheduling the meetings. We'll be able to work with them to get those scheduled. And stop me if we need to if you have some thoughts about adjustments.
Those dates, do they conflict with anything in the district?
The 18th is DLT, but I don't know to what degree that's
It's what?
DLT. I don't know if the 16th and
You just turn
17th.
that into a
District
focus
leadership team?
Mhm.
Who's included in that group?
Principals, directors, executive
I
directors.
mean, if they're already coming and you want us to, we can turn that into one of our focus group meetings. Unless that's like interfering with.
Yeah,
the
it
work
wasn't
of the
so much that as about space and the use of me. I don't know to what degree. On the facilitation part, I know I wouldn't be in a focus group, but as far as welcoming and
Attending
supporting the
okay.
groups.
Well, that's totally up to you, and if you want to be there, the full day to welcome groups, you
Yeah.
can, it's not necessary.
If you have someone else that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be there to represent you, but it's
Yeah.
not necessary.
Okay, then I think those days.
Who's already left? Who doesn't get
That's
Right.
right. And all the people that snuck out already.
Then I think
All
those days
them.
can work, and whether we can figure out whether we use DLT time as part of it or
Okay,
just
that's
on the
fine.
17th, we can schedule those groups either way.
From those dates, Nola and I will take all of the information, we will compile all of the results. It does take some time to put together the executive summary of all of that work, and the survey, we'll also take the survey data. And so it gives us about a 2-week turnaround to build and develop that leadership profile report to you. It is comprehensive. I would say if there's any wiggle room, it might be between those 2 dates, but again, it's cutting it close, and we want to do our due diligence to do a good job on that profile for you. But if we need to find a couple days here and there, can you remind us when you said your kickoff for the school year
Convocation.
is? Do you remember?
Like the start date for the school year, the
Uh-huh.
convocation, it's probably going to
Convocation.
be that Tuesday before classes start.
August 8th.
August
August
8th.
8th.
So we're like 2 days off, so if we need to adjust.
Well, and so I was thinking that anyways, because you have our proposed announcement date on a Thursday. I mean, we could, if we move that up a couple days,
Okay.
because we've actually got a regular board meeting on that Monday, July, what would that be, 17th?
Instead of, okay,
So instead of the
then when
20th, if
get
we
the
just even
second round.
backed it off 3 days.
The only dilemma that we have is it's going to take at least a week from the time you interview the candidates to get those background checks, that final background check, unless we do those comprehensive up our way. Let's see.
Well, if we do the 3, when we get down to 3 candidates,
Board interviews, so we could actually do that after the 29th, because if that looks like
yeah.
we do the 6, we'll know who the 3 are. At that point, we can probably get that done. And so tell me again when your regular meeting is?
July 17th.
July 17th. So instead of July 20th, July 17th, to name the loan finalist.
And tell us the purpose of that 21-day.
That's the law.
Right. but why? I assume
That's for
somebody.
community input.
Gives everybody time to.
So that, because that's the big reveal,
Yeah.
and now it's 21 days for
When you sign the contract.
everybody to come and complain about who we chose and why.
Yeah, you know, things like.
Criminal
things
record.
It is very, very rare that anyone pulls
Yeah.
out within it has happened, but it's rare that
That's
anyone
very
pulls
rare.
out or that the board changes their mind. But it does.
So
give-
it's not just a mere formality, though. I mean, there really is, in that 30-day period, we could change our
You
mind,
could.
or they could change their
Absolutely.
mind.
You could,
Absolutely.
that would start
And
the process over.
It's also a time to negotiate the contract, so
Yeah.
you'll have
That-
some ideas going in, and so will they, what they're gonna be asking for, but then there's the real negotiation, like, okay,
Yeah.
what else? And so if
Yeah.
you all just can't.
And I
come
think
to-
that's probably why we really want to have the 21-day period over by convocation,
Yeah.
because we want everybody to know that this new woman or man standing in front of the teachers and staff, they're
There's
there for
a,
good. Yeah.
one thing that we recommend that you do, once you announce the loan finance, is get that person over here to meet you.
Yeah. Which is good, I mean, that's a tough time of year to do that, but
Yeah, but-
absolutely, yeah.
But the importance of that, if people want to nitpick and, complain and criticize you for a person, let them meet them.
That's right.
A lot of times, this isn't just somebody out there in space, this is a real person. Meet them and see what you think. And usually, board's done a real good job, and they kind of like them once they meet them and hear what they have to say. Let them make some comments to, a public group and take them around and just let them meet the teachers.
Yeah,
in
they'll be
school.
then setting up their classrooms.
Yeah, but, that's a helpful thing. And that's what happened. I mean, in that one where they had such a big problem, we said, get that person down there. Once they meet her, they're gonna like her. And they did. They got her there. The board had to have one big hellacious meeting and listen to everybody talk, but they listened. They got her in the district. She's done a great job. And the board held firm, this is who we want. But there's only one other possibility. I think we may be able to work this out if you,
Yeah.
once you select the final 3 for interviews, we get to start the background check process
For all three of them.
for all 3 of
All
them.
three.
And you could move that up in terms of the day you announce it.
Yeah.
Thinking convocation on the 8th, but we can do, but we also can not do convocation on the 8th. Or we can do convocation that later.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So we had gone through and made a list of our special focus groups, and because of our aggressive timeline, that's soon.
Yes.
So if some of those people who we really want their feedback cannot work those dates into their schedule, do we have a vehicle for getting that feedback? Because I know it's more in-depth than just the survey would be. Or I would assume it's more in-depth.
Yes, it is.
Because of conversational
Yes,
nature.
it is conversational, and we get a lot of really good information
Yeah.
from those meetings. The only other thing that we could do is a virtual.
Yeah.
But I think that, that can get like, and in the conversation, unless we limited it to a certain number of people. So if we're very specific about the people that we want to invite to that, I think we could reasonably do that.
Right. It may not even come up, but just thinking through in case, some of our special invitees can't make it and really do want to provide some feedback. I'd like to
Yeah.
make sure that they have an opportunity.
If it's a small enough group, we can certainly facilitate that. I can do that.
We've done it, but
Maybe
we've
they
done
can
it
have a phone
virtual
call or
before.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
but- Okay, great.
Yeah, we've done it.
Jody, I wanted to check, I'm noticing that the board initial interviews is the 28th and 29th.
Yes,
And right now, I'm scheduled to do a workshop on the 29th, so I want to know how firm is this date before I
That's
cancel
why,
on?
that's why we're having
another
this conversation.
Yeah.
So if we need to adjust that, then let's do it. One option is, let's see. So seminar for interviews. So we would have the board meeting with you all on the 26th to talk about the interview process and so forth. That gives us a little time to put together and contact the candidates. It's a tight squeeze, but,
Yeah, you do 3 a day. And
so, we could do the 28th and the 30th. if, or if you all wanted to bleed into a weekend, you could do the 30th and
First.
Not
the
with that being
first.
the 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, that's
I think a
leading
lot of
right
folks
into
will be
that,
okay.
right?
What would the 27th, I don't even know what day the 27th would be.
That's
Tuesday, but it's the day after the,
Board meeting, it's gonna be
Yeah.
a tight
Because we-
squeeze
we-
unless, let's see here, screening, phone interviews, and reference checks.
the meeting where they present the finalists.
Ah.
Yeah, and our regular board meeting is June the 19th. like usual.
Unless we moved that board meeting to the previous week, like the Thursday or Friday before.
Do you
Again, that's
think you'll
a,
be ready?
that's a tight squeeze. That gives us, let's see, the 5th, 1, 2. I bet. So Rick, that just gives us, instead of 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks to screen, to do those phone interviews with the group. We'll just have, I think it's doable.
Yeah,
I think that's
I think
doable.
we can do that.
If you want to look at maybe I
Okay.
don't think we can be ready by the 19th, your regular board meeting.
Yeah, no, that's,
But if you could have a special board meeting maybe on the 22nd or the 23rd, that would give us at least the weekend to get applicants ready. And here by the 27th and 28th, we could do that.
I would really appreciate if we
Yeah.
could do that. I hate to cancel one.
Well, we can do something. I don't know if the what was it, the 28th and 30th?
would that be an
Does
option
that
for
work?
you?
Is that an
Well, the
option?
30th
Do
is
the same Friday?
It's okay for me. I don't want to inconvenience y'all, and I'm just booked on the 29th already.
Does that work for everybody else?
What do we-
27th,
We're talking about
28th.
June 27th and 28th, or June 28th and 30th, which would work best for y'all.
I can make either.
Yeah, I'm fine with either, so.
Everybody okay?
And what
What's
we
gonna
would-
be better for y'all? I mean,
What will
we're
work-
only talking
what
a
would work
day.
better for you guys?
Yeah.
Would 27th and 28th work better, or 28th and 30th
Well, let me
work better?
complicate
It
some
doesn't
more,
matter to me.
because
I'm just
I'm out
grateful
of the
you're
country
willing
in
to do
July
it.
when you guys are trying to do interviews.
That's what's good for you guys.
I know.
Yeah, it's mainly what's good for that, and that we can do it, that we can actually,
I
if
kind of
you,
like the idea of doing the 27th and 28th,
Back to
because you're
back
kind of
days.
in a flow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if that will work for you guys.
so on the 26th is when we present the slate. The biggest problem I see is getting candidates to an interview the very next day.
Well,
Because we
so
won't-
we're talking about moving that board meeting the week before
Oh,
to maybe the 22nd or 23rd.
Oh, yeah.
but that's what limits our ability to
Yeah.
recruit.
Yeah, it's just a
Right.
couple of days.
I'm a little
We're closing
concerned
the
about
schedule that way.
I mean, is that doable? Do y'all need that extra weekend to really kind of sift through everything? I
That's
don't
when
want to
we-
put y'all in a bind. I want to give y'all the opportunity to do a
Very
good,
best.
quality, thorough search, but
It gives us it gives us 2.5 weeks to, and we're still, I mean, we're recruiting now, but it's screening those applicants and then pre-screening interviews with
would it
those.
be possible to give y'all a couple more days back off our leadership profile report, or is that not possible? Like, do y'all need that much time to compile all of your information? Because right now you've got it on Monday, June 5th. What if we move that up to previous Friday or Thursday?
We can probably do that. Let me look at. Yeah, that's cutting it close.
Yeah, and turning around. That may be harder than the other ones.
Well, that gives us 2 weeks. I mean, a little over 2 weeks. I think we could probably shoot for June 1st or 2nd,
Yep.
if that would be okay.
Okay.
Can we say June 2nd?
Yeah, that's that Friday.
You better say the 1st, because I'm thinking about Nola and her travel schedule.
The first, sure.
The 1st is probably better.
The first,
Yeah. Yeah,
You'll send us a revised calendar?
yes, ma'am. Yes, of course. First, and then our screening, we have longer than at that point for our screening, so that would be the 22nd. Do we want to say the 22nd?
For choosing the slate?
I mean, yes, for choosing the slate.
Sure.
Slate presented to the board, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
June the 22nd?
That's a Thursday. And we'll need to know if you're an evening or afternoon, what works best for you all for these meetings.
With enough lead time, I can do any.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Just tell us when you want us.
Okay. So June 22nd. Set candidates, June 22nd. Okay.
And so the interviews then would be on,
Up through the 21st, from June 1st through the 21st. That gives us,
And that seminar for interviews and final stages of process, is that with us or is that with candidates?
let's see.
Currently you have penciled in. for the
seminar
week of
for
the
interviews,
26th.
that's with y'all.
So do we combine that? Do we do that at the same time as you present the slate to us?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
then we go into
So that's
executive
the-
session for the
That's the
22nd.
22nd. Yes, ma'am.
So the 27th and 28th is where we're going to be interviewing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'll work on this. And then, that puts us at July 17th, naming the loan finalist. And then you'll be able to name your finalist. Well, I'll count the 21 days. It may even be, I think we've moved it up enough that might give you,
I think that
maybe
gives us
the
an extra day
7th.
of, yeah, wiggle room.
Uh-huh.
17th is,
July 17th.
Yeah.
Meeting, and then 21-day period would expire on August 7th.
So
Okay.
you said July 17th?
Yep. The naming the finalist. Okay, and the week of July 10th is good for you all. That is
That is not
every
gonna work.
one of those days, 10, 11, 12, 13.
But I mean, we can't work around you. You're just gonna have to miss it.
Yeah, and that's the only option.
I'll just do my best to channel you and the way your mind works.
What are you missing?
You might hurt yourself.
He's gonna be completely out of the country, what, that whole month?
No, just that week. Well, I'll be back the 12th, the night of the 12th.
We ought to move those back.
No.
So the night of the 12th, so the 13th and 14th? Does that work for you?
Let's look.
Well, and again, what we get, we've resolved that issue. Because once we
Oh.
know who the three are, we're gonna do that.
July, you're saying July 13th, 14th would work?
I get back.
It's all on you.
I land at like 3 o'clock on the 12th, so anytime after that.
Like 3 p.m. on the 12th, so if we did it on the 13th and 14th?
Yeah.
And just for, I want to make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you need actually more than 2 days, because when you meet with the last three candidates, we start with we'll ask a couple of board members, take each of those candidates, like the first one will arrive on a Tuesday, and take them to lunch and tour the district with them. And then then they'll do their interview, and then, and I may have this backwards, but then the next day.
At dinner.
At dinner, and then the next day, maybe it starts with that interview and the dinner, and then the next morning they go to coffee and tour the district. Well, then that night, you get the second candidate, so you really need like 3.5 days.
But these are the three final
Yeah,
preferred
those are the-
candidates?
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
so
That's too important for anybody to miss.
yeah, to miss,
Yeah.
this
'Cause
is
that's when
really
you're gonna
important.
interview the people a second time and make a decision.
so that's July.
So when would the first interview happen?
When you get
So
back?
we brought them in on the 12th, when will we actually do the first interview as a board? The 13th?
Well, right now they've got it, they've penciled in as Monday through Thursday.
I know,
10th
but
through
if the
13th.
12th is.
It would
I'm
be
honestly
the
not gonna be
evening of the
10th,
12th,
11th,
wouldn't
but
it?
we started the
They
12th.
would do the
The
dinner.
evening
And I don't
the-
need to be here
Evening
for
of
that.
the
Yeah,
12th.
if
Yeah,
they,
the dinner and showing them the district and flag.
typically though, they
True.
actually
And there's no
come
actual
in
interview till the next day. And
and
somebody else does that piece.
they take them
I'll be back for
to
interviews on the
lunch,
13th.
and then they do
Then
a tour,
Canada Tuesday,
then they do
13th, maybe 14th.
So that's the first day.
Do one, I don't know, I just don't have the schedule looks like.
So they interview after they've done the tour of the district?
So we could
That's
front load the
typical.
tours and the glad handing and all that until, and then wait till he gets back to start the interview?
Is that the 13th?
Well, we could do that first interview the afternoon of the 12th, the evening of the 12th.
Assuming your flight, yeah.
Assuming all things work right.
Yeah, if you can do that evening,
Right.
that's the interview.
Right.
What can happen that day
They can
is
do the
you do
district
the
tour.
lunch and the tour, and you wouldn't have to, in fact, we don't want all the board on that. We want
No.
like
Yeah, just some of
two,
you.
Okay.
Right.
two board
Yeah.
members or three at the most to go to lunch with them, and then another 2 or 3 go take them around the district.
Well, let's shoot to do that. That goes 12, 13, 14. and
12,
push the
13,
schedule
14? Is that
And then have the interview that night.
That evening again.
Yeah, at dinner and interview.
Yeah.
And then, and here's what happens next, the next morning, the board president and one other member of the board, whoever, can, have breakfast with them and talk about contract. Talk about anything else that they want to ask or you want to ask of that candidate. And then you start the process all over for the second. They come in that morning, you meet them for lunch, take them to lunch. Another group, a couple of board members will take them on a windshield tour, and then you take them back to the hotel, they get ready for dinner, and you get ready for dinner and meet them, pick them up, probably, take them somewhere to dinner and have your interview either before or after the dinner, usually after. And then that process, the next morning, you do the same thing, and you start, the third one starts that day. So that, it actually, it's, as Jody was saying, it's kind of more than 2 days, it's 2.5 kind of.
Okay.
But that'll work if you can be here for the,
Yeah.
The evening of the 12th, yeah.
Is it 3.5 days?
it's actually 2. They come in, let's say they come in on, first candidate comes in on Tuesday, maybe it is 3. Tuesday.
We'll get it all straight.
And goes to breakfast the next morning. Second candidate comes in on Wednesday, that's 3 days.
3 days.
All right, so as long as we're timing that first interview to be the night of the 12th,
We're okay.
then we'll have the night
I
of,
mean,
the 13th
that may
interview
push
and
us
the
into a
14th
Saturday, but
interview.
that's okay,
That's
right?
okay.
Huh?
Yeah, if it pushes
Yeah.
into a
Okay, that
Saturday,
works.
that's fine.
That works.
Yes.
Yeah,
So the dates are the 12th, the 13th, and 14th?
yeah.
Is there 15?
I think we're gonna leave it right to the board.
On 15th, okay.
Yeah, we'll have breakfast that morning and wrap up that morning.
Yeah.
And we'll have, when we get to that point, we'll have, you sign up, who's going to do the tour, who's going to do lunch.
Yeah.
And then that only gives us a couple days before we plan on coming back as a board and voting, but that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll have- If we haven't been able to make up our mind, we're probably not going to, and we'll delay until later.
Yeah.
What did we have down for that?
That's right.
The 17th? Is that what we
July
had?
17th, name balloon
Yeah,
finalists.
and you're good with the 17th, everybody's
Yes.
good?
Yeah, that's great.
And just to make sure you all eat your Wheaties that morning, and then at those days, the 27th and 28th, when you are interviewing. That's
Of June.
3, of June. That's 3 per day, so it's a marathon.
How long do each of the interviews usually schedule for?
It's about an hour and a half. The second one is usually longer, but it's usually an hour and a half. We'll ask you to give questions to us. We'll write a script for you, and we suggest on the first interview, you got 6, that you ask the same questions to everybody.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay? And then the second one, we'll do the same thing. We'll script it for you, but it's more, we want you to just have discussions around those topics or anything else you want to talk about. That's when you're going to meet right after that to make your decision. And each time, after the 6, after you finish the 6, we'll be here and we'll meet with you. And that process, you go from 6 to 3 that night.
Okay.
And then the same thing on the next one. You'll have 3 interviews. That's when you have the dinner, et cetera. We'll be there when you finish either, well, not that night, but the next day. We'll be there. That one probably should be midday. And leave that meeting with a lone finalist. That's the plan. The only, I think, one time when we didn't leave that meeting with the line finalist. And that, it just happened, I think that was on a Friday, and the board came up with some questions that they hadn't clarified, they wanted the answer to. And so they agreed that I could call the candidate and ask the questions and get it in writing. And get it to the board that weekend, by Sunday night, and then you would meet the next day and declare your line finalist. They had plenty of time and that sort of stuff. That part wasn't a problem, but generally, sometimes it'll take 30 minutes, sometimes it'll take 3 hours to get to a line finalist. Just depends on the situation. And I think we said this, but the way we want to do this is to make this process as easy as we can for you, but to make your decision very hard.
Because of,
Quality.
choosing the,
Quality.
because there's going to be three very good.
Quality of the
all of them would
candidates.
be fantastic. And try
That's
to
our goal.
narrow it down to one.
You may not feel that way when you see the applications, but generally, when you meet the candidates, you're going to feel that way. We've had several times where, in fact, in Fort Worth, they looked at those applications and said, I don't know about this person or that person. And after they met them, it was like, oh my God, this is so much better than we expected.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna, real quickly, just one more time. So our focus groups are set 17th and 18th still on the calendar.
Yes.
Leadership profile, June 1st, and I will send a clean copy to you all. Interview reference checks by consultants will go through the 20th of June. That'll be our deadline, maybe even sooner. So we'll be ready for our board meeting with you all on the 22nd to talk about the candidates, for you to select the candidates to be interviewed on June 27th and 28th.
Yes.
And then you'll pick your final three at the conclusion of that on the 28th. We'll need time with you all on that date. We'll pick you all will pick the final three. And then we will schedule those interviews July 12th through the 14th. And then announce the lone finalists. After that, after the 14th, after those meetings, we'll work with you all again to narrow your finalists, narrow your three to your finalists. And then we say July 17th, name the lone finalist. Assuming we have the reference checks before then, we can almost move that even to the 16th if you all wanted to. But if you...
Well, that's a Sunday.
Oh, it's the Sunday, the 17th.
Yeah.
That puts us right at the 21st day is August 7th, and have a board meeting, prove it. They'll already be here, whoever that person is.
Right.
They can be here to kick off the conversation.
Fast and Furious.
Wow.
Fast and Furious, thank y'all so much for accommodating us.
We'll
I mean,
figure that out. And if I could just one more time make sure that we have all the takeaways correctly. I think we've finalized the groups. Lindsay is our contact person. She'll farm the work out to staff. We're doing the online survey with all 7 of the groups. Then you all will have access to the portal. No one else will. Lindsay, I believe you're also our board liaison person, so if we have to interact, and then of course, president. And you all have our contact information. I want to make sure you have that. We have yours. This is a confidential search. We're going to produce a slate of 6 candidates. We're going to treat integral candidates like we do any other applicant. We're going to keep the qualifications broad and then start to narrow our scope as we begin to see the applicant pool. Salary and fringe benefits, we'll hold on that. Advertisements, middle of the road package, the middle package. Setting up the superintendent's page, we'll work through Lindsay. She will coordinate with her staff, Melinda. Communicating with the media, that will be the board president, unless you defer something to us regarding the process. Background checks will be comprehensive. We'll do it on the top 3 candidates. The calendar, for all intent and purposes, is finalized, but I will clean it up and send it to you. Scheduling board members for input sessions. That's the other thing. So when would you like us to contact you all, and I'm assuming by phone, to do your one-on-one interviews?
When you get back to the office, send us an email.
Anytime between now and then. Okay, and it'll either be.
So I'd say just, coordinate with each of us individually.
Okay, that
She
sounds
can
good.
get you all of our email addresses, or I can send it to you too.
Okay, perfect.
So just keep an eye out on your ISD.
Okay. And then review process. Did we go over the entire process and customize it as needed?
You feel like you have a customized search?
Customized, yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
All right.
Okay, so we got the takeaways. Are there any other questions or concerns or anything else that we need to talk about
No.
from your position?
Great job.
So who's Stephanie Nowak?
Stephanie is the assistant that we work through at the headquarters, and she helps us. She's our administrative assistant. Stephanie with HYA.
Yeah. We have there's a full-time staff up there, lots of people. And that's a great thing about having HYA. We got lots of backup. We can get things done, turn it around quickly. Noah and Jody are quick to putting stuff together.
Perfect.
So you'll be hearing from us on the
Soon.
calendar soon.
Yes.
Soon.
Everything's very soon.
We didn't have a lot of other options.
All right, well, thank y'all so much.
Thank
and
you.
I think that concludes the
Yeah.
workshop.